What's up, everybody? Welcome to Flagrant. You know, there was a vote by the House committee to see if we could get the whole Epstein file released. And shockingly, some of these politicians, I believe, how many of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them said that it's probably not a good idea that we release the full, detailed Epstein file. And, you know, what we could do is just decide to move on to something else. I'm sure there'll be other news stories. Or maybe we could bring somebody who has become quite the expert at the Epstein story. Phenomenal podcast. Our good friend Saagar Enjeti, everybody. Yeah, I saw your episode with Tucker. It was absolutely amazing. And, I didn't realize how detailed and in-depth your knowledge of.
Thanks, brother. Well, he's got a kid now.
So we gotta know.
So now, he's gotta know.
That's true. You gotta protect it. And I have a baby girl in particular.
Yeah,
so
true.
it's not
I
all
didn't
cost.
do the research, but I asked you a lot of questions.
That's what all good men do.
Yeah, you
Okay.
outsource to an
Yeah,
Indian.
exactly.
So maybe it's a good idea that we just kind of start with the case for Epstein being intelligence, because what I've seen quite recently is a lot of people kind of wiping the record and acting like this is pure conspiracy, that he did have any ties or connections. And I think there's a lot of we have a lot of tidbits of information that we've all kind of collected, and there's this collective conscious that he absolutely is. So, what is the argument for it? Maybe give us some backstory. I know you put together something amazing, so just break it down. Who is this Epstein character that we all think we know so well?
I'll start off from the top. I totally understand people who are saying it's a conspiracy theory, and in large part, I think it's because it's been wildly overstated by some people, which is natural in open environment, right? They're like, he's obviously Mossad, he's obviously CIA, this is part of a blackmail ring. And in my opinion, the American people actually have it right. They just don't have the language, the facts, and they need to pull it together. And I want them to have the information that they have to be able to make that case, especially whenever we have the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett just yesterday, who said unequivocally Epstein did not work for Mossad. Now, remember, there are key terms here that matter. Work is not the same as asset or worked with at some time. And this is the master game that these people play, the non-denial denial. It's one of the most classic things in the history of Washington. So let's start at the very, very, very beginning. And I've put together some stuff. That's why I have my laptop here with me. So the first time that we can see any link between Jeffrey Epstein and somebody who would become eventually very important to a story in the intelligence world is in 1974. So 1974, right here in New York City, where we are today, Jeffrey Epstein, despite having no college degree and being a dropout from New York University, is hired by Donald Barr. Now, why does that last name sound familiar? Donald Barr is the father of William Barr, who is the U.S. Attorney General under Donald Trump in 2019, who actually presides over the investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein suicide. I'll just call it a death here for now. So Donald Barr in 1974 hires Jeffrey Epstein at the Dalton School.
Does Donald Barr have intelligence connections himself?
Yes, he certainly does, as would be a surprise to all of you, as do all of the storied families of the people who are connected to the most elite private schools here in New York City. So here we have a New York Times report from 2019. Jeffrey Epstein taught at Dalton. His behavior was noticed. And what they talk about specifically is that Epstein, even here in his early 20s, is already exhibiting the pedophile behavior that it becomes known for. He starts harassing a lot of young girls, and in the span of just 1 year, finds himself basically under investigation and departs under weird circumstances after teaching math here at the Dalton School. So the question is, why did Donald Barr hire Jeffrey Epstein, a person at the Dalton School, to teach math, but despite having no credentials, no college degree? I mean, you can't even get a job at a public school without a college degree and a teacher certification.
Let me ask you
this is the first time we see it.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. This is, and I think it's important to just give pushback so we kind of understand. I don't even want to call it pushback. My dad had a college degree. He walks in and he asks if he can be work in the news station.
Sure.
And so this is back in the 70s. And he's able to get a job working in a news station. Eventually was on air. So there was a different time. Could teachers just teach at an elite private school?
No, they could not. And that's the thing. So no, they could not. Not common. The Donald Barr, and by the way, actually departed the school at the very same time as Jeffrey Epstein. The cope from Donald Barr and others, the explanation is that he very often had an unconventional hiring strategy. But, people who attended cited Dalton and others, basically said it was a very weird hire at the time, and nobody still to this day really has an explanation for why. That's the very first known link, and it's weird. Okay, let's just be honest, it's weird. So from 1974, 1975, we have the departure. So somewhere around 1976, Jeffrey Epstein meets a guy named Ace Greenberg of Bear Stearns. Of course, you guys know, for the younger audience out there, Bear Stearns is one of the most storied investment banks in Wall Street history, went down in 2008. So Ace Greenberg, whose child goes to Bear Stearns, meets Jeffrey Epstein. Ostensibly, it's some sort of like parent event. So here we have Jeffrey Epstein's deep ties to top Wall Street figures. So it talks here about Greenberg.
Just so I can understand.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Epstein was teaching
at Dalton.
Ace Greenberg's kid at Dalton.
Correct.
Builds a relationship with this Ace Greenberg guy, who is one of the heads of the bank.
Yes, he's the head of the bank, one of the most powerful men on all of Wall Street in the 1970s and 1980s.
Got it.
So Ace Greenberg hires Jeffrey Epstein initially on the options desk. What ends up happening is Epstein's actually not very good at that. So they're like, what's this guy any good at? So they transfer him to basically the high net worth money management desk. And effectively, for the next 5 years, Jeffrey Epstein learns the art of money laundering. He manages high net worth individuals' money. What he does with that money is he specializes in offshore accounting. And then specifically, what he does is he gets deep in with all of these shadowy figures who are experts in the Cayman Islands and moving money offshores. Now, this is the first known time that he begins to develop the portfolio that will make him very useful for intelligence agencies in the future.
Now, sorry, real quick. Are they moving money offshore to avoid taxes, or it's
initially it's to avoid taxes? Now, but what we eventually learn is from the formation of something called IAG. So after 5 years at Bear Stearns, Jeffrey Epstein is fired for a Regulatory D violation. Basically, he broke internal banking rules and insider trading. So there's two things that we learn here. Number one, he's involved in sketchy behavior from the very beginning. Two, he's not prosecuted. He's basically fired, let go, and everybody keeps it hush-hush. I'll come back to that in the future because he develops a strategy there called playing the box. Playing the box is a strategy he admitted to, where he said you can break the law and you can always get away with it because people will be too embarrassed to be able to call you out for it, which will enable you to continue your money laundering.
Why would they be embarrassed?
Because Bear Stearns would be embarrassed by the fact that they have somebody who is managing so much money inside of their bank.
Was he internally caught?
He was internally caught. So that's why he was...
So SEC doesn't find out. The Bear Stearns finds out.
Bear Stearns compliance, and they're like, look, we need to make this go away. We don't want to deal with this anymore. He just needs to go. So from that point forward, 1981, Epstein forms a company called IAG, the Intercontinental Assets Group. I'm going to read directly here from the description. He is a, quote, high-level bounty hunter who helps clients recover assets. This is the first entree into what will eventually sprawl as a global intelligence network, because a high-level bounty hunter who helps you recover money is not involved in, quote, legitimate business.
What does that mean, recover money?
Yeah, exactly. So it's in many cases, he eventually gets involved with people who are running Ponzi schemes and basically keeping and hiding money offshore. He sells himself, and it's very unclear because none of the records of this have ever really been released. But the description of high-level bounty hunter indicates to us that his specialization in offshore banking is one that becomes very important to intelligence networks. So this is where people might ask, like, hey, why do we even care about this? Why would an intelligence network even want offshore banking? And the reason why is in the 1980s, there were all of these very sketchy arms deals that were happening. Here we have in the United States the Iran-Contra affair.
Yeah.
This is the Cold War. And everybody actually has a very distorted attitude as to how the CIA front companies work. Nobody at the CIA has a bank at JP Morgan Chase that says CIA that goes and buys a front company building.
Right.
Did you guys, perfect example. Did everyone watch Argo? Did you guys watch the movie?
Yeah.
So remember how Ben Affleck's character flies to Hollywood and gets a front man to open a company and the money is laundered through the front man? That man would be known as a CIA asset because he's able to open that front company. So that's why it's very important to the CIA.
They don't work for the CIA.
Of course
they have their own job.
Exactly. They have their own money. In many cases, they put up their own money.
Exactly.
But eventually get reimbursed somewhere in shady offshore banking thing on the back end. So these are vital parts of any intelligence network, Israeli, US, Saudi, everybody.
Because if the CIA's everybody does, then
of course.
It would work as espionage.
Exactly.
Because Iran would be like,
you
why
have
is
to
the
be
CIA
able to
trying
hide
make
it.
a movie here?
And then you get Iran-Contra blown up.
That's exactly.
So being
This
a
is
CIA
literally
asset
the story
isn't necessarily in and of itself bad.
No,
it's necessary.
It's
for the CIA
it's
to
just
function.
the way that you do business. There's no value judgment here. So the point is that at this time, this is when he begins to develop a relationship in somewhere around between 1976 and 1981 with a man named Douglas Leese. Now, Leese is a very important character. Douglas Leese was a UK national. He's a verified in UK government documents as having been involved in multiple arms deals and is thought to have been at least somewhat of a CIA, MI6, some sort of intelligence asset. Douglas Leese is an expert, again, in offshore banking and international money laundering. At the age of 20, I think it's 28, and somebody can check my work on this, is that at the age of 28, Douglas Leese brings a young Jeffrey Epstein on a private plane to the Pentagon for purposes that we still do not know. This is long before Epstein is a billionaire. This is when he's involved specifically in offshore banking. Leese is basically the conduit through which he is then introduced to all of these very important people. Yes, Adnan Khashoggi, who is a very important person in this story. Stephen Hoffenberg, who is basically the source of a lot of this information. Keep in mind, Stephen Hoffenberg, and he went on the record to Vicky Ward, who's the journalist who did the original expose on Epstein in 2002. He was convicted of one of the largest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history. What ended up happening is he was trying to con Epstein, but Epstein actually conned him out of $100 million. But he, Stephen Hoffenberg, basically showed the relationship between Douglas Leese and Epstein, which Epstein got very testy about whenever he was asked, basically pretended, I hardly know the guy. Leese is the person who introduces Epstein to Hoffenberg, to Robert Maxwell, and to this Adnan Khashoggi. Now, the reason why all three of those names matter is that Hoffenberg shows the conduit of the way that Epstein was already working with illegal enterprises and offshore banking. The way that he alleges Epstein stole his money was specifically through one of these offshore transactions. The other two names I
so
just
a guy was running a Ponzi scheme,
and then he got
caught, and then wrote a hater article about it.
And actually, Epstein cooperated with U.S. authorities against Hoffenberg and basically got him locked up in prison. This was only acknowledged years and years later. I mean, he was a master. He was a master networker. We have to give it to him. But again, here's another link between the community, Intel, the U.S. government. Jeffrey Epstein, here's a link to offshore banking, and then specifically Adnan Khashoggi and Robert Maxwell. So who are these two individuals? Here he has Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi is the uncle of Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi journalist who was butchered in the Turkish embassy. But for our purposes, what can we look at here? Saudi arms merchant, world-class playboy dies. This is from his obituary in the Washington Post. So why do we care about Adnan Khashoggi and his association with Epstein? And these are verified ties between the two. Adnan Khashoggi is somebody who worked on all kinds of sketchy arms deals throughout his life. These people are very useful to the Saudi kingdom, to the Israelis, because they are cutouts. They're not officially part of the royal family. Their money is used to finance various different arms deals. He has a verified connection to Mossad and to funneling arms between Israel and Iran in the past. All of this is out in the public record. It's effectively been acknowledged, and I don't even think it's really disputable.
I know that you've spoken about this already, but I just want to make this, I want to make this incredibly clear, right? Where it's like, governments and countries cannot be actively involved in these Cold War tactics.
Exactly.
So they need to find these proxies to do it.
Yes.
And those proxies might not necessarily be bad. Matter of fact, they offer incredible utility.
Absolutely.
So like a Khashoggi, for example, for Saudi Arabia might be one of the most important figures in executing the plans of Saudi Arabia without getting the people in charge of Saudi Arabia dirty. And at this point in time, it's looking like, as we go through the story, Epstein might be an asset to the United States of America, or maybe when we get into Maxwell, or at least it doesn't look like there's anything incriminating on him so far.
No. Well, I mean, to be fair, his pedophilia and his proclivities were kind of secondary to his money. Now, the reason why I think he eventually gets away with the stuff that he does in the future is because of all the work he did in the 1980s and the 1990s for these various governments.
I don't want to connect this to like a movie, but there's this movie, Art of War, that Nicolas Cage is in.
Yeah.
And there's this...
I love that movie.
It's a great movie. And it's based on, I think, like a relatively...
It's based on, I think that guy we just released from Victor Bout or something like that. Yeah, that's right.
Lord of War, I think it's called.
We got a 6 woman.
Yeah.
For the Lord of War. Yeah.
Right.
And so basically, he goes... there's this moment where he's arrested, and this like guy from the FBI has been holding it down. And he eventually goes, "Hey, listen, somebody's going to come in that door and let you know that it's time for me to go." And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, blah blah." And to me, that's kind of what it's feeling like so far, where there could be these connections. And we might get it misconstrued where it's like the government is involved in this like illicit child fucking blackmail scheme, when in reality the government's looking to be like, no, actually, we were just running guns. And
Yeah,
we were
we're
just
running
following dirty
guns.
money. And
we're funneling stuff between Israel and Iran. This is why, the Saudi government can't facilitate an Israel-Iran arms deal, right? These are all allegedly mortal enemies. But Khashoggi, he can do it. He can finance that deal, and we can make him whole on the back end. Now, go ahead.
And last thing I would say is I was talking to a friend of mine. I think Morgan Stanley or J.P. Morgan banked him. I forget which one. Was it J.P. Morgan?
At that time?
This is later on.
Deutsche Bank and J.P. Morgan both banked Jeffrey Epstein.
And a friend of mine was working over there, and he basically, I was asking about it. He's like, he just operated with dirty money.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, the government had an eyeball on him, because it was advantageous for them to know who's sending him $30 million from El Salvador. He was the banker, and a lot of these banks will just take dirty money.
Of course they will.
If you're getting tens of millions of dollars from a third world country, please believe it's not because they're selling slushies on the street. There's some fucked up shit going on.
Yes.
So, and I'm just trying to position at this point right now, the government might think that they have an asset working in their best interest. At this point.
This is a rational case for them. We're not yet involved with eventually becomes the pedophilia ring.
Also, guys, tour dates. I'm going to be in Kansas City August 1st and 2nd. August 8th and 9th, I'm going to be in Toledo, Ohio at the Funny Bone. August 22nd and 23rd. It's a lot of fucking Ohio, huh? Liberty Township, September 11th through 13th. Let's hope I don't bomb on those shows. Dania Beach, Florida. Bunch of other dates on my website at akashsing.com.
What's up, guys? Mark Gagnon here. I got some tour dates for you. If you want to skip forward, dude, I'm not going to stop you. You know what I mean? I completely understand. It happens.
All right, suck his dick. Suck his dick.
That's not bad, honestly. That's not bad. That's not bad.
Dick, guys.
I bet it is bad. Don't do it, okay? Because this Saturday, New York City, on July 19th, I'm going to be doing Alex's show at the Hard Rock. Come on out. It's going to be...
Absolutely. Suck his dick, guys. Come on.
And then I'm going to be in Stamford, Connecticut, Hoboken, New Jersey, Levittown, New York, Chandler, Arizona, San Diego, Burlington. I'm also going to Canada, Toronto, Montreal, a bunch of other days. Detroit is in there, and we're adding some
you can suck his dick, guys.
into the
Come
new
on,
year.
guys.
I'll see you guys at the show. God bless you all, and peace be with you.
And like Mark said, this Saturday, July 19th, New York City, Times Square.
Suck his dick.
At Hard Rock Casino, Times Square, we have a happy hour, we have comedy, we have an after party after. Come have a good time. Wait. Cancel Comedy X on Instagram, link in bio.
Let's move now to Robert Maxwell. Now, Robert Maxwell is probably one of the most central important figures in this story. Robert Maxwell is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, and Robert Maxwell is basically an intelligence operative from day one. So Robert Maxwell is a very interesting early life story. He's a Czechoslovakian Orthodox Jew. He flees the Nazis, finds a way to escape from mainland Europe, fighting with the resistance to the UK, fights the Nazis in World War II. He gets the second highest medal from the British government during World War II for his exemplary service, and he becomes a British national, changes his name multiple times. What eventually happens, though, is that Robert Maxwell begins to roll up the tabloid news empire. He's a Rupert Murdoch of his time by rolling up tabloid news in the UK and effectively becoming like a sovereign wealth fund in and of itself with his billions. Maxwell is a very committed Zionist and somebody who's very important to the state of Israel. He's been openly acknowledged at this point as a Mossad asset. I have his code name here. Let me find it. He was known as Mega, quote, the bountiful source. This is from a former Mossad operative who described
Anybody see the Tetris movie?
No, I actually didn't see it.
Okay. He's a character in the Tetris movie.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like he's personified as himself as part of the story, which is one of the assets that they owned, I guess, might have been the
Maxwell is, again, just like Khashoggi. He's financing international arms deals. He's very important to Mossad. He's very important to MI6. He's very important to the U.S. intelligence community. But the thing that really puts him apart is that Maxwell is a committed Zionist, and he works specifically on behalf of the state of Israel to advance its interests. And the most extreme example of that, can we put that Wired one up there? It talks about the Inslaw octopus. This is a very important article from the 1990s, and it describes basically a piece of software that Robert Maxwell was integral in both financing and selling to the Department of Justice. And it was Israeli spyware that was installed on vast numbers of U.S. government computers that was used specifically to spy on the United States by Mossad and the U.S. and the Israeli intelligence community.
What year is this?
This was in the early 90s. This is whenever it was exposed. But in the 1980s, this is something that Maxwell was directly
Has there been
involved
punitive
with.
measures taken for this act?
Actually, I'm not actually sure about this. I mean, as usual, whenever it comes to Israeli operations on U.S. soil, we're all like, hey, you should cut it out. And then we don't really do anything about
There's
it.
a great doc.
Jonathan Pollard is a very good example of this.
There's a doc on Netflix about this, the octopus murders. And this guy, Danny Castellero, that basically tried to expose this.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I never watched it, but I know what it is.
It's fantastic. And then he gets murdered in his attempt to try to expose the Inslaw software.
All right. So there we go. That's Robert Maxwell. He's involved in things like this. But I could actually go on forever.
What did you say about Pollard?
Jonathan Pollard. Do you know who that is?
No.
Jonathan Pollard is one of the greatest spies in U.S. history. He was a NSA employee in the 1980s. He was spying on behalf of the state of Israel, selling them secrets. There's a picture of him right
you spoke
there.
about this on Tucker.
Yeah, I did. So he served 30 years in a U.S. prison. While he was here, he became a cause celeb in Israel, saying that he was unjustly persecuted, even though he was a United States citizen, selling secrets to Israel. Bibi Netanyahu visited
he sold
him.
the secrets to Russia, not
No.
right?
Israel sold the secrets to Russia.
Yeah,
he sold the secrets to Israel. No. He sold the secrets to Israel. Let's be clear.
Okay.
Israel sold them to the Soviet Union. Jonathan Pollard was actually granted Israeli citizenship, I think, in absentia. Bibi Netanyahu visited him in prison here in the United States of America, basically saying, we're always going to stand with you. The moment his federal probation is up after he's released from prison, after his sentence, he moved to Israel and he's never coming back. So that's a perfect example here of you have a United States citizen spying on behalf of the Israeli government, open caught. It's all admitted out in the open. The Israeli government says, hey, we're friends. Like, just forgive him. He was just a Jewish patriot doing what he wanted for his country, even though he was not an Israeli citizen there at the time, granted him citizenship, and openly campaigned for all of our presidents of the United States, Bill Clinton onward, to pardon Jonathan Pollard. And they came pretty damn close, let me be clear. So that's another example of how we really treat Israeli espionage very differently than all other espionage on the United States. If you guys remember in the Ted Cruz interview where Tucker was like, it doesn't concern you that Mossad is spying on America. He's like, well, all countries do it. All friendly countries spy on each other. There's an exception that we seem to make here for this country.
Have we been caught spying on Israel?
I don't know if we've ever been caught in a high profile operation. I mean, I'm sure that we do. And in fact, we probably should, considering, what's going on. Actually, you know what? We definitely have been, because I remember there's been documents, leaks from the Israeli cabinet meetings. You remember the Signal Gate, Signal leaks? Yeah. I published some of those documents, and in one of those was actually minutes from the cabinet meeting from Bibi. So yes, we are spying on the Israelis as well. To be fair, we're spying on everybody.
So it's like if we're doing it, like, all right.
Although the Israelis did get kind of upset about that. So, it's a little ironic because they got upset whenever we were doing it, but, not intentionally.
Yeah, I saw Dershowitz saying that, we do that, or they do that. Like, he was trying to make it, they seem like, since everybody does it, it's okay.
Right. Yeah, but it's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's like we should all punish, if we
not okay when we do it, it's not okay when you guys do it. We're supposed to be allies.
That's right. Okay, so let's continue.
We should do it.
Yeah, we should. Let's continue with what
get away with it. Just get away with it.
Robert Maxwell over there.
All right.
We're coming back. Robert Maxwell. All right, Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. So this is how Jeffrey Epstein meets Ghislaine Maxwell, his eventual co-conspirator in the child trafficking network. And Robert Maxwell, of course, has a very shady death. Nobody is still really sure how he died. He allegedly either jumped or fell off of his yacht, which, of course, happens to everybody.
Yeah,
it's somewhat believable, but I mean, it's just one of those things where, he is killed he dies in very suspicious circumstances. He has all kinds of luminaries at his funerals, and whatever he knew, kind of goes to the grave with him. So after that, in this period, we have 1988. This is probably one of the most important years in the history of Jeffrey Epstein.
Before we move away from Maxwell, can I just tell you a fun little tidbit?
Of course.
I want to get this right, and I have to check spelling and everything on this, but I wish I had. Okay, ready? Right now, I think one of the issues with releasing the Epstein files is because if you release a report that implicates people without them being investigated, that's a concern. And I think in Britain, there's called the FCA. That's their version of the SEC. I'm pretty sure, something like that. So basically, they have a process that you give that person that is named a chance to respond or submit evidence before the report is released so that they can address concerns which might end up altering the report's conclusions about that person. That process is called Maxwellization, and it's named after Robert Maxwell.
That's amazing because it fits with his character and the way that he operated. But that's what I mean.
It's
So,
a media magnet.
and look, actually, let's take a second. Why do these tabloids matter? If everybody remembers the whole David Pecker scandal here in America with Donald Trump, it's that they basically they're like private intelligence services. They hoover up all of these stories. They often buy people's silence through non-disclosure agreements, and then they use that as pedigree with the richest people in the world. Like, hey, Donald, we held this story on Karen McDougal who accused you, so we expect something a little bit in return.
If you own 5 different tabloids, you can print the same story that's allegedly on all of them. Then the other newspaper articles and TV shows, they start picking it up. So before an algorithm, you have to create the trend.
I mean, you're literally describing the New York Post to Fox News pipeline, right?
What are you talking about?
Okay,
this is crazy to make an allegation like that.
That is, I mean, they're owned by Rupert Murdoch. It's out in the open. Many people who work there will tell you that's literally how it works. It doesn't take a genius to figure this stuff out. But let's return to the money. So 1988, very important year in the life of Jeffrey Epstein. He leaves or basically reforms IAG. At this point, it's been 7 years. He's very important to many of the world's most influential arms dealers and other people. Almost certainly at this point is embroiled in some of these deals. This point is a very sketchy point because now he creates the J. Epstein Company. The J. Epstein Company, self-described, accepts only clients with $1 billion. This is a year where there are only 140 billionaires in all of his existence in 1988. There's not very many people who are billionaires. And to have $1 billion in cash, liquid, to be able to invest is effectively unheard of. So who are the people that this is ostensibly for? He pitched specifically as, quote, an economic advisor to the super rich. No other services have ever been advertised, and this is the source eventually of all of his wealth. And so it's somewhere around this time in the 1980s and the J. Epstein Company that he signs a client named Leslie Wexner. Wexner, one of the most important figures again in this story, really the source of much of his money and his power to the way that it eventually becomes. Leslie Wexner is one of the richest men in America, one of the richest men in Ohio. Leslie Wexner is a committed Zionist. He's donated and worked with the Israeli government, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Leslie Wexner eventually, in this time period, effectively signs over his entire portfolio and eventually leads to power of attorney being signed over to Jeffrey Epstein. You guys had a great exchange where you were like, hey, we have a decade of friendship here, and I would not sign power of attorney over to any of you. There's only one person I'm signing power of attorney to, my wife. There's nobody else who's ever going to get it.
We're supposed to do that?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying if we wanted to, I'm saying that's the only person who conceivably is ever going to get that.
What about business managers? Do they have power of attorney?
No, or they have a limited power of attorney, and that's very different than his entire control of his estate. So somewhere in this time, in the 88 to 91 period, in just 3 years, he is able to convince this man, Leslie Wexner, multi-billionaire, the founder of Victoria's Secret, to basically sign over all of his power of attorney and control of his assets. Even more importantly, over the next 5 years, he effectively begins transferring many assets from the Wexner fortune to his own personal portfolio. Multiple properties in the state of Ohio, which are actually referenced in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial for the sex trafficking purposes. Those are Wexner properties. And then the infamous, massive townhouse in Manhattan, at that time, the largest private residence, basically valued at some $70 million. I mean, again, who in this world is transferring $70 million townhouse, largest private residence at the time, the city of New York, over to this man,
so let's
Jeffrey
make the
Epstein.
steel man.
For what purpose? Go ahead.
Is there a purpose? For example, is he trying to avoid taxes?
Yes.
Is there what? Give me the argument outside of corruption.
Sure. Leslie Wexner has talked to his people, and he's talked to people about this, and his explanation is that Epstein was a money wizard, that he simply had ideas.
Is that what we call him?
They said he's a wizard with money. He's the smartest man with money I've ever seen. The Steelman case, for how this has nothing to do with blackmail, is exactly what you just said. And this is eventually what's hinted at by the richest and most powerful people in the world is, guys, we were doing money laundering. It wasn't about blackmail or any of this other stuff. It was a way for us to launder our money internationally. I'll come back to it, but that's basically the excuse that Leon Black gave. Leon Black is genuinely one of the richest men in New York. He was $9 billion net worth, founder of the Apollo Group, one of the largest private equity firms in the world. From 1997 onward, he has a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein to the point where he puts him on the board of the Black Family Foundation. And it eventually comes out between 2012, 2017, he transferred $170 million to Jeffrey Epstein and to Epstein-related accounts
his argument,
for, quote, tax advice.
Now, his
That's what he
argument
said.
is that over that 5-year period, he gave him $170 million and saved to the tune of $1 billion.
That's what he claims.
What
yes.
he claims.
Yeah, but
now, if that is the case, all of us would hire Epstein immediately.
Right, that's right. But there's no way to do that legitimately. And also, if you look at all of the paper trail for this, Epstein was not a licensed financial advisor. He was not a licensed tax advice person. He was not somebody who is ever well known in the hedge fund industry. I mean, this is the question about why are these super rich people transferring all of this money to this individual? I'm willing to believe money laundering, but with the Wexner case, I just simply can't get there. Vicky Ward and James Stewart, biographers and others have looked into the story. They really believe that blackmail is somehow at the center of the story of Wexner.
I think that
this is purely speculation on my behalf.
I think
want
that
to make
makes
that
a
clear.
lot of sense, especially for economically ignorant folks like myself, which are like, I'm not giving a fucking townhouse to anybody for any purpose.
Exactly.
But there are these certain situations where people set up these trusts, they set up these LLCs, they set up these S corps so they can put certain to avoid taxes. They create these loopholes. So there is a version where he had found a way to do this. I don't understand why passing it directly to Epstein avoids taxes, because Epstein would then have to pay those taxes.
Right. Yeah,
so these
exactly
are,
right.
Like, why not put it into a joint trust that Epstein has access to? Why is it specifically passed to Epstein unless...
For his personal use.
Yeah, for
his personal use,
unless
let's be clear.
he needed it under his name to validate him to do certain
Which
things.
is what eventually we began to see with the story. And also, look, let's be honest here about Wexner. Wexner is the founder of Victoria's Secret. Like, would it be crazy to say that the founder of Victoria's Secret is kind of perverted and Leslie Wexner's been photographed with all these young women?
Lingerie
and,
for teenagers.
It's like literally, making lingerie for teenagers. Yeah, well, I'm shocked to be told that this person is involved with some weird stuff. Again, look, because he's still alive and he would sue me, that is purely speculation on my part based upon publicly available information. I'm not claiming anything otherwise. But
don't they have to go find barely legal
bro.
supermodels around the world?
I mean, that's their business model,
like,
to be clear. So let's just say that.
When do you turn 18 so I could put you on this runway with wings?
This happens, right? So that's the person and the individual who's at the nexus of a lot of this stuff. Now, let's say then what we move from there, because that Wexner transfer sets Epstein as the king of New York, as the king of New York society.
Can I ask one more question before that? Are there any people in finance that look at that transfer and they go, wow, this was a smart financial decision for Wexner?
I have not yet found a single person.
Got it.
In fact, every rich person who I have ever talked with about the Epstein thing has told me I have no idea what the fuck was going on.
And has anybody explained, Wexner or his people explained why it was advantageous to him to transfer?
He just said it was a terrible mistake and that he trusted Epstein entirely with his money. He literally called his relationship and the transfer, quote, a terrible mistake. That's the only public apology that he's ever given on the case.
It is
Wexner's never gone into it. By the way, he's still alive and he should answer questions.
It is interesting that we haven't seen him in an interview. Like, we've seen Prince,
he shut himself down.
But we've seen Prince Andrew in an interview.
That's right.
Like, he's maybe the only person that we haven't heard speak publicly about this. And
a little bit, but it's been years. I think in 2020 is when he gave his apology. But same with Leon Black, by the way, who resigned from his public company and has basically disappeared from New York society. Jess Staley, the former CEO of Barclays, Epstein's private banker. I'll return to him in a little bit with the Israel connection because he's a very important part of that story. But he's also resigned, and now he's not CEO of a publicly traded company. Doesn't need to testify. Doesn't need to give any interviews. He's filthy rich, and you know how these people operate. You can hire bodyguards and live behind a wall for the rest of your life. So that's basically where we are.
With Maxwell Sr. and when Epstein and him meet, did they do any business together that we know of?
So this is the problem. We don't have the full records, and this is part of the why the release of the files is very important. And I will also return where I think defining the files as a list is very important, because that's not how it works. People seem to have it in their head that there's a ledger, that there's a black book that's like paid or have kitty tape supports Israel now. It's not how this works, guys. Like as a journalist, like what we're doing here is we're compiling information. We're looking at public stuff that cannot be explained otherwise. We're steel manning the case. We're reaching out to Leslie Wexner for comment. The IRS today, as you guys all know, has all of our information. All of the Butterfly Trust accounts connected to Jeffrey Epstein.
What's a Butterfly Trust account?
That was an Epstein linked account, which the New York Financial Services, by the way, you guys should take this up. Here in the state of New York, they have all access to Epstein's financial records 2013 onwards because they fined Deutsche Bank for their business with Epstein for violating the bank rules and for violating New York State regulations. New York State has the books for his entire financial life, 2013
And didn't JP
onwards.
Morgan pay out an insane
JP
settlement?
and Deutsche Bank paid like $75 million to the Epstein victims, specifically for facilitating a lot of this trafficking. But my point is that I want those documents. I want the Butterfly Trust accounts. Leon Black, the way that he even paid Epstein, and this was only available by subpoena power that we know of, was through some private jet holding company. I mean, this stuff is all masked in a way that their names were never supposed to be on top of any of it. The only way we can get it is from release and from subpoena from the United States government. Part of why the Trump administration's decision is so very disappointing.
And so I know I keep cutting, but I just want to make sure that I understand this. Like, it seems so brazenly foolish for these people to even be tangentially connected to Epstein.
Well, and again, not before this time.
I don't want to be giving them an out, but I want to be really understanding the situation. If you are operating with somebody who uses, nefarious techniques to hide money, which I do not put past any wealthy person.
No.
Anybody who's got tens of millions of dollars, I promise you they are doing some shady shit to hide that money, to move that money.
Yeah.
Like, I know a guy who would fly to the fucking Bahamas with tens of thousands of dollars strapped to his body. It sounds like out of a movie. He would do it regularly.
Why are you snitching on me like that?
That's
You guys all know him. I just want to so there was a regular thing to just avoid taxation, setting up accounts back in, I think this is probably like the 80s. This is not as so doing these things to avoid taxes is quite common amongst the people who makes tens, 20, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But doing it so directly with Epstein is what I find peculiar. And there's a part of me that goes, if they're doing it directly with him, do they not feel concern about his relationships and intentions? Is there some sort of trust there? Because like you said earlier, the CIA knows they're on some fuck shit. So they're like, we got to make sure that we're not associated with this. Why would you not?
Well, that's a great question. Especially,
does that make you know what I'm saying?
I don't. If he's been operating for a decade now and he hasn't been caught, hasn't gotten in any trouble, it's like, oh, this guy's good.
That's the defense I would make is that in pre 2005, before the investigation, it's actually somewhat understandable for somebody who is not in Palm Beach or New York society. I would say more in the 1980s. From about 95 onward, it's an open secret. Jeffrey Epstein likes kids. Jeffrey Epstein likes them.
When does he first get caught? I thought
it's 2005. That's the very first investigation into Epstein, the actual law enforcement investigation.
So we could make the argument that before that, it's greed.
Well, yeah. Again, though, because all of these people live, this is as you're saying, the super rich is the smallest is the smallest group in the world. Yeah. They may live all over the world, but they're actually all in the same place, basically all at the same time.
Yeah, they're doing all the
jet
always
setter
in St.
events.
They're
always in London. They're always, Tahoe, whatever, like Palm Beach. This is why they all know each other. So to a certain extent, I actually can't really forgive it because it's such an open secret in the 1990s that Jeffrey Epstein likes little kids, basically, and is trafficking young women. Well, before the 90s, I guess we could give him somewhat of a pass, but it starts to become out in the open.
I'm not trying to give a pass. What I'm trying to do is not be guilty of internet trends.
Yeah, sure.
Which is like applying something we learn about and is confirmed in 2005 and 2008 with a conviction to everyone prior to that.
Fair.
I think after 2005 and definitely after 2008, you're aware that you're dealing with a convicted pedophile.
So you're a registered sex offender.
Yeah,
registered sex offender.
There's no excuse.
Yes.
But before that, I do think that there are these people that just want money and they'll do anything for money, and they are already operating in pseudo illegal behaviors and activities. And there's this incredible desire and thirst for power, so they might be willing to rub shoulders with these nefarious characters.
And if there's some, before 2005, there's some level of plausible denial.
There is some. Yeah,
even
exactly
if they do
right.
know,
and
they're like, he's not.
And if he's like, I could save you $1 billion, you might be tempted to take that plausible deniability.
This is the thing. You're taking it literally, and I'm still not quite sure that I'm there yet. I'm not quite sure he actually was doing anything of the tax advice sort. I still don't know. Yeah, I still am not clear on what he was actually doing.
I don't think anybody's clear.
Nobody's clear. That's part of the problem.
Which is what's so. But I want to make sure that when we're pinning people to certain things, like if you're staying in his penthouse after he's a registered sex offender, you're pinned. Like there's
like
no
the Prime Minister of Israel.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Like Bill Gates.
Yeah, like Bill Gates.
Didn't he have an office in Harvard?
Yeah.
Was that after?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to go back and double check.
But again, those things, like, let's pin it right there. There's no question. You have
George
staff
Stephanopoulos who had dinner at his
why
house.
Why are you hanging out? Like
can't do some Google?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you should, because
aren't you?
he's journalist.
Journalist?
Exactly. So okay. So there are these. I get it. I just want to make sure that we're compartmentalizing a little bit. Not to say that they don't know that they're engaging in illegal activity. They just maybe aren't going, I'm with a kid fucker who's using this as potential blackmail or as an intelligence asset.
Very true. And that's important. So let's get into actually sex trafficking and actually that whole ring.
Don't let me speed you up.
You're fine.
On your...
So 1991 to 2005, I call this the Epstein heyday. So this is, I've gained control of the Wexner empire. I've transferred these assets and these properties into my name. Ghislaine is here, and now it's on. So if you look from that, the Ghislaine Maxwell trial describes many of these Ohio properties being used specifically for sex trafficking purposes, right? So these are just in late 1994, late 1995. Basically, we move from that point forward. The Palm Beach, Virgin Islands, connection begins to materialize. We have the house in Palm Beach. We have the compound in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The
That's
Lolita
Epstein's
Express.
Island,
that's
right?
the Epstein Island.
Yeah.
We have the Virgin Island that's acquired under the Epstein basically estate. Then we have the Lolita Express that's purchased, the private jet. So all of the pieces that are now famous, these all come into play between 91 and 2005. This was the heyday of the Epstein empire.
And is this where you see the images of him and Trump hanging out?
Exactly. 2002, that's when we have the first image. Although, I have it in my notes for the Trump-Epstein relationship. Let me go ahead and find that.
Don't let me speed you up.
No, it's fine.
Stay on this.
So 2002, Trump says, I've known Jeff for 15 years. So basically putting the relationship back to the 1980s. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side, no doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. So that's Donald Trump in 2002. Just again, to show everybody here what we're dealing with for the open secret. All right. So he likes them on the younger side. He said it. And if you want, there's video if you want to go ahead and play it. I have the YouTube link from NBC News of them hanging out. Let me find footage from 1992, actually. Can you go ahead and click that one? It's a YouTube link. It's from a NBC News package in 2002. It's some B-roll that actually shows them hanging out. So here we go. This is the famous. They're all hanging out together. And by the way, I haven't showed this yet, but there are photos of Trump and Robert Maxwell hanging out together as well in the past. So he certainly knew a lot of these individuals. We can see him dancing. They're at a party. Apparently in the mid-2000s, there was a party that was thrown involving Victoria's Secret models that was put on by Epstein and another associate of Donald Trump, where they all hung out. So just putting that out there.
Who that other guy is.
I actually don't know. I love his tie. It's very 1990s. So anyway, look, the footage, it all exists. And I'm sparing nobody here. I want to be
to your earlier point, the super rich, the super elite is kind of a small circle.
It's
not kind of an incredibly small circle.
They all know each other.
So
if
in 15 years,
hanging out,
you're going to hear some whispers about one of your friends.
It's not even a whisper. He said it out loud on the record.
Trump
did. He just said it.
All right, guys, we got to take a break real quick because America is under attack. Our freedom is under attack. Epstein's list is being suppressed. And there's only one company that could stop that from happening. There's only one company that cares about freedom. There's only one company that cares about America, and it's a caffeine company, obviously. Black Rifle Coffee. They make this energy drink right here. I drink it every single episode. You guys see it right there. You see me sipping out of it. This is the reason that I'm not getting sent out of the country. Because Trump's team sees this and they're like, oh, he's one of the good ones.
Yeah, patriot.
Otherwise, it might not matter that I'm a citizen. Black Rifle Coffee keeps me in America. If I had to go back to India, I'd be in jail. But I'm here because of this.
Yes.
I do think it's a little bit offensive that Jamil handed me this specific flavor, Project Mango.
Yeah.
I felt that is a bit of a slur from Jamil to toss this can at my head. But that's what it is. Project Mango. I am Project Mango. Black Rifle Coffee. The 200 milligrams of pure American caffeine. You drink this, you won't be on Epstein's list. Because you won't even mention children, because this coffee is from good Americans, good veteran Americans who help keep us safe. So guys, head to blackriflecoffee.com/flagrant and use the code flagrant, and you get 30% off your purchase and your first order. They didn't need to do that. Honestly, it might get to the point where if you don't buy Black Rifle, you get sent out of America, and that's just what it is. But they're going to give you 30% off regardless, even though this is the only coffee and energy drink that you should consume in this entire country. Again, go to blackriflecoffee.com/flagrant, use the code flagrant, and If you don't want to do it online, if you like to do things in real life, you can also find Black Rifle coffee and energy drinks in grocery stores and convenience stores near you. Convenience stores, ending with that, also felt a little pointed. But let's get back to it. Listen up, noodle dicks. You know what time it is. It's Blue Chew time. Listen, not all of us have a 12-inch dick like Alex Media,
Right.
okay?
Yes.
Not all of us look at Conor McGregor's dick and say, oh my God, that thing is puny. Oh my God, his dick can only bench press 25 pounds. What a weak dick he must have.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, which I am,
Same.
who doesn't look at Conor McGregor's dick and say, oh my God, that's a micro penis, unlike Alex Media, then you need to probably introduce Blue Chew into your sexual regimen. Listen, ladies, if you're with a guy and he's fucking awesome and perfect and thoughtful and considerate and he has a small dick, you might be dating me. And if that's the case, I would compensate by just taking some Blue Chew. It's got all the same active ingredients as those other dick medications, but this is the one we trust because it's the Chew. They've been rocking with us since day one. And as always, they got a special deal for Flagrant listeners. You get your first month for free if you go to BlueChew.com and use a promo code Flagrant at checkout. All you got to do is pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Again, head to BlueChew.com, look at the safety information, look at the details, make sure everything is okay. Again, that is BlueChew.com. Use the promo code Flagrant. You get your first month free. Just pay $5 for shipping. Now let's get back to the show.
2002.
Yes.
Very important year in the Epstein story.
Yeah.
2002 is when journalist Vicky Ward, she works here in New York City, Vanity Fair magazine.
This is the Vanity
And
Fair
Vanity
article.
Fair. This
Yes.
is the very first premier magazine to say, who is this guy?
Yes.
Graydon Carter, the legendary Condé Nast editor, king of New York society. It basically works with Vicky and says, hey, let's go write about this Epstein figure. Vicky eventually uncovers evidence of the young women trafficking, of the intelligence community ties, and all of this in 2002.
How does she uncover this?
Because she does a great job. She goes and interviews these people. That guy, Stephen Hoffenberg, who's in prison, she interviewed him in prison, and she didn't print his quotes until 20 years later because it was shut down by Graydon Carter. Now, Joey, can you please put up the story from
Can you
New
quickly
York
tell
Magazine?
us why Graydon Carter would be able to? I understand the
Yeah.
name Condé Nast, but maybe explain.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what I'm having here in front of me is a very
shit.
crazy story. Is that according to Carter, somebody put a bullet outside of his I think it was either outside of his house or wherever he was, and a dead cat to intimidate him while he is investigating the Epstein story. So it eventually comes out.
What is Condé Nast? Just
Condé
explain to
Nast, I mean,
people.
they own Vogue. They employ, if anyone's ever seen The Devil Wears Prada, like that's based on Vogue magazine, and Anna Wintour, that's part of the Condé Nast
But
empire.
Condé Nast empire. Imagine with Rupert Murdoch, with
Yes,
news stations.
exactly.
This is with
and
magazines.
Actually, dude, it's so hard because the audience here is going to be young, so they don't even remember the Vanity Fair heyday. Like this was a big fucking deal.
before blogs, before like your favorite Instagram page.
Yes.
There were magazines. And
This was the beating heart of American culture. Vanity Fair magazine, The New Yorker, Vogue magazine.
newspapers were information,
Absolutely.
and magazines were more like op-ed. Right?
Yeah,
This was
magazines were not just op-ed. They were actually the places where this type of journalism. I mean, there's stories at Condé Nast about guys were getting paid $500,000 a year. They would write 3 stories a year, but they would spend 6 months like Vicky Ward.
because it was real investigative
Dude, it
journalism.
takes
It would
years.
change the face of the country.
Some of my favorite journalists. There's a guy named Dexter Filkins at the New York. He spent like 6 months. One of my favorite war reporters. They'll go out and report for 6-7
there's
months.
conspiracy theories
for
about
like a
it now,
10,000 word article.
Theoretically,
Yeah.
Watergate, whatever the conspiracy, conspiracy theories aside, that's journalists breaking a story that caused a president to resign, changed the trajectory of the entire world.
And now when it happens and you see like a 20-page article in the New Yorker or something like that, you're like, who the fuck reads this? And nobody really reads it. But at the time...
Oh, it was everything.
And that's why like our parents, and I think that we're probably a little bit even too young us, maybe you just because you're involved in journalism so much.
I have read about it so I can contextualize it, but I never experienced it.
But this was the heyday of like information, and it created habitual reading, right? Just my parents had a subscription to New York Magazine and New Yorker, and like every single, when is it coming? It's weekly? Yeah.
It used to be. I don't know anymore.
But it's like, so they're reading it every single, and the pieces that are in there, the assumption was that these were like real investigative journalism pieces, and they're uncovering truths that take months and months to put together. So they really gained like the support and trust, at least of maybe like I don't want to say like more like coastal elites.
It's what you just described, the global elite. The global elite is very small. It's like maybe 10,000 people who run the entire world. And actually that might even be a little bit generous, and they're all subscribing to vote. I mean, look, Anna Wintour is still an icon amongst the super rich. So like obviously it really matters. So Epstein basically uses the threat of legal action to shut down any mention of his intelligence ties, which he's confronted with directly, any mention of the sex trafficking and the pedophilia accusations, and all of it is dropped from the Vanity Fair article that culminates in the 2002 story, Who is Jeffrey Epstein, the Mysterious Man of New York? But it insinuates things about being with women, and he knows everybody. He's friends with Harvey Weinstein. He's friends with all of, New York society. Everybody seems to know him. You have the quotes by Donald Trump and others. And so what we see there is 2002 is a very important year because it shows his power to shut down Graydon fucking Carter, his power to bring the Condé Nast empire to bear and say, no, you're not reporting any of this. The power of using Harvey Weinstein and others to basically call all the journalists and other people around him and say, I'm going to sue the shit out of you if you report even one word of this.
Now, it's important to note that like shutting down stories is quite common. If you have a PR agency or something like that,
well, especially at that time.
At this time,
when access really mattered.
I would even say now, like you have a PR agency or something's about to release on TMZ, and you know somebody over there at TMZ, you're like, yo, can you just not put out this
if you
story?
hold this, I'll give you an exclusive on
Catch and
this
kill.
in the
But
future.
there's a quid pro quo, which is like, if you don't release this, I'll give you the first dibs on this story coming out with this album release. So it is quite common practice, but to shut down a story that's making an allegation or multiple allegations this big, you need to have some serious weight and some serious quid pro quo.
Yes.
I think it's got to be more than just lawsuit, because these people, I mean, they're lawyered up to the gills. Like if you run Condé Nast.
That's what I was trying to say. To understand how extraordinary this is Condé fucking Nast
This
in
is a
2002.
massive. I mean,
Dude, even me and you and others, when people are like, I'm going to sue you, I'm like, yeah, good fucking luck. I'm like, all right, I've got insurance. I'm like, and I know how the First Amendment works, and New York Times versus Sullivan, I'll be like, I'm going to eat your fucking legal fees for lunch, and I'll see you in court. All right? Because of the legal standard, if you are a public figure, like Epstein was basically at that time, the bar for defamation and libel is so incredibly high. I actually really support that. I mean, it's one of my key differences with Trump is I think it's a good thing because it allows for
investigative journalism.
Well, not just that. We can fucking go for it.
Well,
We
I want
can
to
go
be
for
famous
it
and
without
I'm insecure,
fear.
so let's not.
Yeah. It's like, let's not get carried away here.
We'll get into that in another time.
And then why does he agree to this article? Is it just hubris?
Epstein?
No,
he
tried
didn't
to
agree
shut
to
the
it.
article
Vicky
down.
Ward was assigned. Epstein did not want this to happen.
Oh, really?
He never wanted any
They
of this to come
changed
out.
the article
Yes.
to make it less
Exactly.
accusatory
Less
and
salacious. You
salacious.
can actually go and read it
I don't
today.
think we're understanding how crazy this is. He intimidated Graydon Carter basically to
Yes.
take out a lot of the salacious
To take
things
out the intelligence.
with a fucking bullet and a dead cat.
Yes.
We've seen The Godfather.
It's
The same thing.
It's literally mob
But instead of a
behavior.
horse's head, it's a dead
It's crazy.
cat.
And there's no way to prove that he was the one that did it, but having those.
He's not. Listen, Graydon certainly believed it, and
Yes.
Graydon works and has dinner with the most powerful people in all of
Has
New
he
York.
spoken about this?
He
since?
is certainly not. He has not actually answered a whole lot of questions about this. So that's an important thing.
But does he give
Certainly.
comment to Vicky Ward here?
Huh? Epstein goes on the record in some places, but we don't learn the full extent of all of their exchange until 2021, after he's dead, when she begins to reveal a lot of the stuff that she was actually had on the record in this story. So this is the very first known time of a major expose which would have really hurt Jeffrey Epstein if it had come out, that he's able to shut down. Eventually in the future, we see the same tactics with Good Morning America and with the Prince Andrew story, if you'll recall, of that famous video, the leaked video from CBS or ABC News, where she's like, I had this story, I had everything, and the palace shut it down. And Epstein and all of them basically came together, and we didn't want to lose our coverage of the royal wedding, and so we didn't publish any of this. And she's like, I had the story from day one.
We didn't want to lose our coverage of the royal wedding.
Exactly.
So we shut this down.
The Prince Andrew story.
We would have access to the royal wedding.
Yes.
So again, that's the quid pro quo. It's like, if you want to work with us, if you want access to this story that you know is going to probably sell way more ads than your Prince
Dude, the
Andrew
royal
story.
wedding was fucking huge. You remember that? Women in America got up at like 5 a.m. to watch it or whatever.
Yeah, which is so
which is wild.
embarrassing.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But Alex, go. It's good to ask questions about this.
Yeah.
I think we feel guilty asking because it looks like we're trying to create an out. I'm not trying to create an out.
trying to
I'm
just
trying
understand,
to understand the totality of this and like where they would be coming from if they were going to defend it. So ask your question.
You said that's 2002. when she's working
that
on the story.
came out in 2002.
But then
it was published in March 2003, but it was reported throughout 2000.
But then she doesn't release the other part of the story until
after
20
he's dead.
years later.
Yeah, basically after he's dead.
That means you knew he was fucking kids.
Well,
and you sat on it.
Well, she didn't have evidence, man. We're journalists. We can't say these things. No. See, this is very important.
This is
I can't
why
just come
podcasts are
out.
important.
Yeah, I can't just come out and say these things
anybody.
without evidence. You need to. And look, that I talked about
done
that
it to Mark many times.
But I talked about the barrier, the defamation stuff. Like you need to have some stuff on the record, and she did not have enough that they felt comfortable going forward with something like that.
I thought they felt comfortable. I thought they just took it out because of the intimidation.
They're claiming that it didn't meet the evidentiary standard. Vicky Ward says otherwise. Like, look, I could see the case either way, but the point is that what's come out afterwards is that Graydon Carter was terrified, and so it's not really about the story. It's that he was afraid to be able to publish this. So that is the context of his social power.
Afraid for
he
his...
seemed to be he was afraid for his life.
But because these are different things. Afraid for your life is different than afraid for the success of your, what would you call that? Like
his magazine.
His magazine.
Yeah, his social cachet. His cachet.
And because if you lose access, you essentially have no cachet.
Right.
And which is ironically what Epstein is concerned about. If Epstein becomes persona non grata because of this piece, he no longer can do the thing that he does, which is connect and liaison with super wealthy and influential people.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So that gets us to 2005. So 91 to 2005 is the heyday. 2005 is the first time that we really know about of a prolonged investigation into Epstein and eventually culminates in the sweetheart deal of 2008. So in 2005, a 14-year-old girl who was lured by Epstein, Maxwell associates, and all these people, her father complains to the Palm Beach Police Department about being sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. This leads to an undercover investigation by Palm Beach PD, where they launch this investigation where they're able to connect multiple underage girls who are being lured by Epstein and Maxwell and other associates to the compound and the well-oiled system. There's a documentary on Netflix. This is the part they actually did quite well of just showing the way that all worked. Search warrant finds hidden cameras, sex toys, basically proof of underage communications with Epstein. They have him nailed dead to rights, probably 20 years or whatever, under state law. However, Epstein hires all of these extremely filthy rich lawyers who are able to go to the Palm Beach Police Department. They claim that they were poking holes in their case. Palm Beach PD basically throws up their hands and they're like, look, I can't handle this shit. They're like, this is a level of, this is a machine I'm going up against that I don't know how to combat this machine. They only have a bulletproof charge on him of solicitation of prostitution. But they go to the feds. Now, the feds, of course, have the vast resources of the federal government, the Department of Justice. The person who's in charge at that time is a guy named Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern Florida. Now, U.S. Attorney for Florida, this comes under his purview. This investigation is launched under him using FBI resources. They are able to develop a large case against Jeffrey Epstein. The operation is called Operation Leap Year that is launched by them. Leap Year uncovers evidence that Epstein has an interstate sex trafficking operation involving girls as young as 13 years old.
Jeez.
Now, this is a very important point. We have a secret federal indictment that was issued against Jeffrey Epstein, where they lay out all of this evidence for a sweeping indictment, which would have put him behind bars probably for the rest of his life. This is where everything starts to happen. This is where the sweetheart deal comes into play. And it's at this point, after this secret federal indictment, that they come to the Epstein team and they're like, this is what we have on you. Let's begin a negotiation, because they're looking for a plea deal ultimately.
Why are they looking for a plea?
Well, I think it's I think it's kind of customary where you bring, when the feds investigate you, they have to send you a target letter. They're like, hey, you're under federal investigation. You need to hire counsel, just so we can get this whole ball rolling. I mean, something like 95% of people charged by the federal system plead guilty. So it's quite common. Most people don't go to trial. The feds don't want you to go to trial. If they do, they're going to smack you. They'll hit you with charge after charge, or you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. The vast majority of people in federal prison,
and that's why they have the 95% conviction.
That's why they have their conviction rate. Exactly. So that's how they get to it. And there's a variety of systemic issues. So it was all generally par for the course up until this point. That's when Epstein hires Alan Dershowitz. That's when he hires all these Bush-connected officials.
Why
all
is
of these
Dershowitz
others.
Bush connected?
Well, no, not Dershowitz. There are other lawyers on the team who are connected to George W. Bush, or the administration, to Republican politics in general, because George W. Bush is the president at this time. And it's at this time that you have the sweetheart non-prosecution agreement that is agreed upon by Alex Acosta and the Epstein legal defense team. Now, at this time too, this is a very important point. Joey, can you please put up my tweet? Epstein flees to Israel while he negotiates his deal with Acosta. So if you go to the first slide there, please. Yes, this is from a Vicky Ward story. Talk that Epstein had moved himself and his assets to Israel had reached the ears of such luminaries as Harvey Weinstein, Jeff Bewkes, Alex Gibney, Taylor Hackford, Dustin Hoffman, Alec Baldwin, and filmmaker Michael Mailer. Has anyone told Vicky Ward? I heard someone say. Fame. Ever since I wrote this article about Epstein in the March 2003 story, I've had dubious honor of being considered the New York expert on the case. Well, I've never been one to leave a riddle unsolved, so I called Epstein's office to ask. Around lunchtime, he phoned me laughing, assuming he'd been in Israel, but assuring me he'd been in Israel, but was now back in New York. And he says, would you want to live in Israel? As he denigrates that. So he goes to Israel while this sweetheart deal is being negotiated. This is very important, okay? Again, very important, is that he was safe in Israel for reasons that remain unknown to us to this day.
And you generally can't leave the country if you're under investigation.
And actually, yeah, Joey, can you go to the next slide there?
The government
so
will
when
allow,
he returns to America, as you can see right there, April 2008, Epstein returns from Israel before pleading guilty. Some question why he was allowed to even keep his passport while his team is undergoing negotiation with the federal government.
Can you explain how normal that is?
That is not normal. Yeah. So that is extremely not normal.
If you have money like that, you're a flight risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so while you're being federally investigated, they will take your passport because you were a flight. It's very similar to what happened, I think, at least in the beginning of the Diddy trial. Remember, there was the words like Diddy was going to flee, and I think that they told him that he had to stay in America, right?
So I don't have the. So to be clear, I don't think it's while investigation. There are other. I'm not a lawyer, but the way I'd read about it is it was very uncommon at that time, especially after he agreed to plead guilty. Because remember, he agrees to plead guilty under a non-prosecution agreement in September 2007. This is April 2008. During this period, he is in Israel, where he's going to plead guilty.
2007 to 2008?
So 2007 to 2008 is while he is in Israel. Again, basically, the theory was, the open talk in New York society that Vicky Ward heard, is that Epstein had moved himself and all his assets to Israel. This is apparently, by the way, a common thing, relatively common, for pedophiles who are Jewish in the United States who actually have fled to Israel to escape prosecution.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, Joey, can you go down? Glenn Greenwald.
That is a bad look for Israel, dude.
How Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice in Israel.
Why do they accept it?
Well, Israel has the right to return for every Jew in the world. It's called Aliyah.
So they're taking advantage of like a...
Yeah, but some of them are taking advantage and basically being able to go to Israel. It's complicated as well in terms of extradition agreements, etc. But Glenn Greenwald flagged that piece to me, how Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice.
But sorry, just to try to understand this, is that something that the United States just allows for anybody?
I actually don't know. I only learned of it yesterday. I didn't realize that it wasn't just Epstein, that there's this actually like a common enough phenomenon that people have written a story about it before. I need to go look into it. In general, I would hope personally that we use our influence with all allies or any extradition agreement, that anybody charged with a crime like this against children be immediately extradited to the United States of America.
Because I mean, look, my friends that are in trouble with the Indian government over the joke, they took their passports.
Yeah.
They just got them back. But like, I don't even know if one of them got them back. You're under arrest for freedom of speech, potentially. We're going to trial. You have my passport. This guy is on trial for pedophilia.
Not on trial. He's under
investigation. I apologize.
Investigation and eventually a non-prosecution agreement, which is different because he admits to pleading.
So he hasn't been charged yet?
It had not been charged yet. He enters the non-prosecution agreement in September 2007.
While he's here or while he's away?
While he's in Israel.
So while he's in Israel, he enters. So
his legal team enters on his behalf.
He had already left. What I'm trying to understand is, did he do anything illegal by leaving?
No, I don't think so.
Or anything that's not normal.
It's more about the question of, why do you feel so safe in Israel? And it's like, why are you going over there with all your assets? Did you get some promises there from the government?
But are you normally allowed to leave the
intelligence
country?
Connections? Again, if you look at that Palm Beach story, that scroll up, Joey, and again put that screenshot about returns from Israel to the next one. It was noted at the time. This is a report from the Palm Beach local news that it was uncommon and that there were questions at the time why he was allowed to keep his passport.
Obviously, it looks incredibly fucked up.
Yeah.
But I am trying to steelman in terms of, let's say that there was somebody that all had dual citizenship to Britain. They're being investigated for something. Could they go stay in Britain?
Yeah, they can.
So that would be okay, and maybe not common, but it would be legal.
Although you just made an important point there, is that we have never yet been acknowledged that Epstein ever was an Israeli citizen. So we have no idea whether
Is he at that time?
We have no idea. To this day, we don't know. We do know that he was found with false passports that were inside of his house in New York City. So it's possible that he even.
What do you mean?
Yes. Yeah. Can you Google it, please, Joey? Epstein passports that were found at his New York City residence. This is an open and acknowledged fact, and I'll come back to this because it's part of the intelligence case. Who the fuck has false passports? It's not exactly a easy thing for multiple passports and travels to Africa and to the Middle East, and they were found in his residence in his New York City
Guys, the
house.
Jason Bourne of kid fuckers.
Yeah.
I never understood false passports because everything's connected to the
that's
internet.
right.
It's
Right,
like
which means that there's no really such thing as a false passport,
Yeah.
and there's a passport that's issued to you under false pretenses by foreign governments. So let's just
Or by your own government.
or possibly by your own government.
Like,
All right?
yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In the
Wow.
age of the barcode, there's no false passport. Okay, all right. And
Wow.
when's the last time you guys flew into America? You know how much biometric data and all that stuff is there?
it's
Like,
like-
this is not happening.
But like CIA
Right.
can issue
Yeah, well,
passports.
CIA can issue a passport under that will clear State Department. I mean, look, even
Which
if you,
would confirm the connections to intelligence.
exactly.
So,
Look,
go.
No,
go.
I was just saying, when you land in any country in the world, even the jankiest country in the world at this point, everybody's swiping the passport.
Yeah.
It's
so,
all there.
So then the question would be, or the logical thinking would be, he goes to Israel, and while this deal is being negotiated, if the deal is not advantageous to him,
I'm staying in Israel.
then he's staying.
Staying in Israel.
Now,
Wow.
does he have enough leverage where staying in Israel is actually a threat to the U.S. intelligence apparatus?
This is unfortunately, we still don't know, because this is all part of the unreleased, perhaps Epstein files, and I would be happy to be wrong.
So in one circumstance, it could be as simple as, I'm not living in America as a pedophile.
Right.
I'd rather just live over here.
I'd rather live in Israel.
I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
And there is no intelligence involved. There is another version where it's like, hey, I'm going to go over here. Do you want me to tell all these guys everything I know? Because I could easily just tell them everything I know, and they'll accept that information.
Let's actually really sit on this, because this is what leads to the sketchy non-prosecution agreement. So September 2007, Alex Acosta offers Epstein non-prosecution agreement despite massive evidence of a sex trafficking ring that crosses state lines, a textbook definition of a federal case. He pleads only to the solicitation of prostitution involving a minor, and he must register as a sex offender. The conditions of his non-prosecution agreement basically say he must spend 18 months in the Palm Beach County Jail. He has weekend release. He's allowed 12 hours a day, 6 days a week to basically do whatever he wants. There is some evidence that he actually continued some of his trafficking while he was actually locked up in prison. He had a black car that would pick him up for 12 hours a day. It's the greatest deal in the entire world. And all he has to do is serve 18 months under these sweetheart conditions. And what he is able to do is that he is only has to register as a sex offender. He does not spend decades in federal prison.
So he gets to leave 12 hours a day?
Yes.
That's a job.
For 6 days a week. Yeah, it's called work release. They actually call it work release. That was the conditions. Now, here's another very important thing about this plea deal. Under this non-prosecution agreement, the federal government grants immunity for all crimes that were under investigation of that indictment to Jeffrey Epstein and to all unindicted co-conspirators, including Ghislaine Maxwell. So this non-prosecution agreement grants sweeping immunity of all crimes that were named in the secret indictment, both for Ghislaine Maxwell and for Jeffrey Epstein.
Pause right here.
Yes.
So, in other words, he gets this slap on the wrist compared to what they're investigating him for.
That's right.
And he gets to wipe the slate clean for all the way
immunity.
worse shit.
Yeah.
Now, he gets immunity. That's different than wiping the slate clean. Does he then acknowledge all the things that happened through his immunity?
I don't believe so. I think it was just that these were the crimes that you were being investigated for, and we're going to basically agree that we'll never prosecute you for them in exchange for us.
It's a limited hangout.
Yeah, it's like exactly.
What is that called?
Limited hangout.
What does that mean?
Basically, it's like the publishing of some of the bad things you did in order to hide all of the bad things you
So
did.
everything before 2008, he gets off with 18 months.
Well, everything in the secret indictment that was against.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
Which
that
we
they were able
imagine
to prove,
is-
which, by the way, still exists and has never been released to this day. So there's that.
So there is a virgin,
Yeah.
a lot of them. There is a version where we could Is there any version where we could learn about what was in that indictment?
Yeah, they could release it if they wanted to. I mean, these are part of the promises that have been made by
But
the
would that
Trump
break the
administration.
immunity
Yes, it would.
agreement?
Well,
And-
actually, no. So hold on a second. This is part of the reason. Can you put that back up because this is important?
And immunity
The
is different than getting
the reason why we ever learn anything about this is because of the victims and the courageous victims who, according to the law on the books at the time, is that the victims themselves had a right, a federal right, to be informed of this non-prosecution agreement. This non-prosecution agreement was kept secret from the Epstein victims at the time, which violates federal law.
And once
these people
go.
fight for justice, and it's in 2018 that a court rules that the Epstein non-prosecution agreement violates the federal rights of the Epstein victims. It's under that ground that the non-prosecution agreement is overturned, and it is under then that the Southern District of New York is able to arrest Jeffrey Epstein on new charges. So this civil right, this lawsuit is the Crime Victims' Rights Act. That's exactly what it is. Victims complained they were not informed of the government's deal and were very unhappy about it because they trusted the feds to basically give them justice on their behalf, and the district court ruled that it violated their rights under the Crime Victims' Rights Act and overturned the non-prosecution agreement, which opens the door to his rearrest in 2019.
Okay, so hold on right here.
Yeah.
Because it overturns that conviction. I don't want to say conviction, but it overturns the non-prosecution agreement and the immunity. We should now legally have access to the indictment and investigation.
We don't legally have access to it.
Why is that? Why is there legal? Why can you overturn something, but he still gets immunity through it?
Well, he didn't have immunity. They indicted him on new charges, but there's still an open question as to whether all the new charges in the 2019 indictment against Epstein include the secret indictment and many of the charges that were made against him.
Bare minimum, there would be nothing that would go against our system of justice that would simply expose all the charges and investigation in that initial crime or those initial crimes, right? Because it was overthrown?
Well, it's complicated. So I do know that the grand jury docs were actually released from 2006. I have this in front of me because I don't have all of the details exactly on here, but it's not the full actual investigation.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is this doesn't necessarily prove a blackmail ring, which seems the narrative is incredibly popular online. It's something that we've obviously talked about, but it would at least acknowledge the accusations and the extent of the crimes that he was accused of.
Yeah.
Which we haven't really gotten to at all. We've heard about them.
Yes.
But that information is not, and I think what would be very interesting about that is that if we have access to that information, yes, it might not incriminate the co-conspirators. No, actually, it would incriminate those co-conspirators now.
Yes.
But that would be okay because those people were being investigated and was going to go to trial anyway.
Yeah.
We don't fall into that same Maxwellization Act or whatever I was talking about before.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
This idea that you were around Epstein, so we don't want your name to be mentioned because your image could be tarnished when you weren't actually accused of anything. No, they were accusing you of it and they were ready to go to trial.
That's right. They were willing to go.
Release that bare minimum. We should have all that.
They've released some of that. They've released the grand jury documents, but exactly. So this gets to the whole point. And then even then, whether we can really trust whether all those grand jury documents, which are only released about a year or so ago. And by the way, I'm not a lawyer, so if I misspeak on any of this stuff, please forgive me. I'm actually just trying to compile all the evidence. What we do know, at least according to the Justice Department, is that this was a deal that should never have happened. But that doesn't happen until 2020 after Epstein kills himself. After the Office of Professional Responsibility officially says Alex Acosta showed poor judgment whenever he entered this investigation. But that's the whole ball game here, is why we let him off on a sweetheart deal. Go ahead.
Was Ghislaine the only co-conspirator that got immunity?
I think she wasn't named in it. It was to any co-conspirator. She wasn't specifically named, but it did cover her because she was one of the people who would.
I guess it covered all co-conspirators.
But I think what Alex is asking is who else was covered.
I'd have to revisit that exact case, but I know there were assistants and other people who were involved.
That's the thing. Look,
this doesn't just. It's remember Harvey Weinstein? He had all of his assistants,
and then it's just Harvey that did it.
And it was hold on a second here. There's a lot of people that need to know about this to make this all happen.
So here's a weird question, kind of. Why would that judge in 2018 suddenly kind of buck everything else that's happened and say, no, these victims have a right to justice.
Because it's a clear-cut case. It's literally the law that they had to be informed of the non-prosecution agreement.
Very ignorant question. Why did it take 10 years? Were other judges
the legal system is very
no?
slow. That's just basically what it is. Also, a lot of them were felt in silence. A lot of them didn't even know about it. They learned about it later. And after they learned about it, they thought that this had all been a lot more he'd been penalized more after they learned. Again, that documentary on Netflix, that actually goes into all of these specifics. But
Do you know if
I'm more focused on the intelligence question.
Yeah.
That's like the case I want to really stick with because that's the whole ballgame is here. Is why did Acosta let him off?
And before you get to that, Mark, what were you saying?
Do you know if the statute of limitations applies for these kinds of things? If someone's sort of like collaboration with a crime is
we'd have
nullified?
to do the math, but if you think about the statute of limitations, Ghislaine goes on trial for crimes in the 1990s, so presumably all of her convictions, if it's in 2021 I think she was convicted, then let's go back some 20 years, so there must be the statute of limitations. There is for everything I think but murder, but it presumably does go back like decades enough that she was able to be prosecuted.
So
at the very least
other co-conspirators
could also be,
and wouldn't it wipe away the statute of limitations if there was proven that the case wasn't handled according to the legalities of our justice situation?
I'm not a lawyer.
You get what I'm saying? It's like, let's say like they
you would think so, but I could also see some bullshit way where they're like, no, it's the government's fault for entering into a bad thing, so you can't prosecute it. But
they didn't enter into a bad thing. They didn't tell what are the people?
victims.
They didn't tell the victims of the
Yes.
agreement.
Right.
So I would imagine it's like a mistrial. You're allowed to do it again. I don't think that the statute of limitations should wipe that away.
I think the victims will just have right to see that agreement. I don't think it would undo the agreement.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that they didn't have to do anything except tell them, hey guys, this is what we did.
And the reason they didn't do it
just didn't do it because it was a sweetheart deal.
It was a sweetheart deal.
And they didn't want to reveal why he's able to get away with this. But this is kind of what brings
Miles
me...
has one question
go
before
ahead,
we
Miles.
move on.
Really quick. The Freedom of Information Act, would this apply at any point? Is there like a time in which this will have to release?
That's it's a big FOIA question. So FOIA, I mean, it can take forever in the Department of Justice, and there are various like classification rules. This leads. Remember, there was redactions in the Epstein files, and even then, it has to go through review of the FOIA officer. This is not really something that we'll ever find out via FOIA. And then, that's almost impossible.
Got it. And then secondly, when people talk about the word or like say Epstein files, are they generally referring to this secret indictment? Is that the bulk of it, or are there so many other pieces?
I'm trying to find the secret indictment details here. Just so, the sealed federal indictment prepared by the Southern District of New York that led to his eventual July 2019 arrest. This was under seal in late June. So this basically goes back to the indictment that was prior to the non-prosecution agreement. That's what I'm talking about.
Got it.
That is not what the Epstein supposed files are.
Okay.
And this is the other problem. Nobody really knows what the Epstein files are. And there's been this bastardization, again, of this idea of the black book and the so-called client list.
Right.
I'm telling you, it doesn't work like that. Like, there are names in books. Some of the names in the Epstein black book actually turned out he never met them, right? So what Epstein files to me is financial records, is the entire
co-conspirators,
the co-conspirators,
right?
The original investigation documents, the FBI 302s, and the
what's the operation? That's what we're gonna learn about.
That's what we all want to know.
But then they take a bunch of tapes and DVDs
and the tapes that were allegedly lost about the cash and the artwork and the flight logs, which are still not entirely released, and been released in drips and dabs.
Hilarious.
Okay. When they do that.
So let's focus here on the non-prosecution agreement and why this did not happen and the case for why it is very, in my opinion, likely he was an intelligence asset. So in 2019, Joe, if you could please put this up from the Daily Beast, Vicky Ward, remember, this is Vicky Ward. This is the person who reports from Vanity Fair 2002, probably the foremost authority on Epstein. She reports that Alex Acosta, while he was being screened by the Trump transition team in 2017, when he was asked, why did you back off the Epstein case? She says here, she was told he belonged to intelligence and to let it go. Now this, I want to be clear, it's not been confirmed 100% that he said this. This is reporting from Vicky Ward about the Trump transition team. Now, though, if you can go to the next link that I sent, in 2019, when Alex Acosta holds a press conference about this entire issue, and he is asked specifically about intelligence ties of Jeffrey Epstein and whether he would confirm this, he says, quote, "I would hesitate to that reporting as fact, but he would not deny it." Later on, he is asked on the record here by the Office of Professional Responsibility whether he had any information that Epstein was an intelligence asset. He says, absolutely not. I did not have information. And he's informed that he is allowed to speak about this in a classified setting if he would like to, but he denies that he had information. But it's important to actually release the exact transcript as to what and how he was asked. Because you remember when I said earlier, when Naftali Bennett said he never worked for Mossad, that's very different than worked with Mossad. That's very different than was aware of, had contact with, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, there are multiple non-denial...
People can be very specific with their wording to evade the truth.
Correct, as any lawyer and as any former U.S. attorney would know when he's under question. But nonetheless, Alex Acosta had an opportunity to address this and issued a non-denial denial in his public press conference in 2019. Last time I was here, I told you guys my great regret is I sat next to him on a plane and I didn't ask him about it because it was a midnight flight from Miami and nobody was talking. And I'm just staring at this dude being like, bro, I gotta ask, you know? Yeah. He probably thought I was such a freak. He's like, who is this guy? Look at me. Yeah, it's like, anyway, so Alex, if you're listening, I would still love to talk to you about
just
it.
So we can,
but he has never
confirmed or denied.
He's never confirmed. He's never denied it. I guess he basically lives. I mean, look, he lives a private life in Miami. He can come out at any time.
He did kind of deny in
well,
his
he
final.
said here, and didn't really deny it. And again,
this is why he wants the exact transcript.
This is why the exact transcript matters, because he said, here, let's open it up very specifically.
Is that transcript available?
No, it's not available. And actually, that's one of the Epstein files that people would release. So Acosta told OPR he did not have any information about cooperating in a federal investigation or relating to media reports that Epstein had, quote, been an intelligence asset. OPR says it did not find any reference to his purported cooperation or even a suggestion. In the footnote, they says when OPR asked Acosta about his apparent equivocation in a 2019 press conference in answering the media question about Epstein being an intelligence asset, he said, quote, "The answer is no." So that's what he told them. Okay, let's be clear about what he said, at least in one on-the-record setting, because there are various different reporting on this. I am personally inclined to take the totality of evidence of everything I talked about his connections with Hoffenberg, with Adnan Khashoggi, with Douglas Leese, to show all of his connections that we're about to get into with Israel and say, I think there's a pretty good case to be made. And let's also get now to why the intelligence community would ever want to cover this stuff up. All right, why? So can we go to the next link, please? This is from BuzzFeed News, 2021. A great reporter, Jason Leopold, he's like the FOIA king. And what he reported in 2021 is secret CIA files say that staffers committed sex crimes involving children. Declassified CIA Inspector General report shows a pattern of abuse and repeated decisions by the federal prosecutors not to hold agency personnel accountable. Now, why? And by the way, some of these agents abuse children as young as 2 and 6, which are named here in the documents.
Oh, my
all right.
fucking goodness.
And so why would the feds not want to prosecute known pedophiles, people who are actually abusing children, not just child pornography? Why? They were concerned if they prosecuted them in open court that sources and methods would be revealed. So in sources and methods. So in 10 different known times here from the CIA Inspector General, they decided not to prosecute known pedophiles, specifically to make sure that they could protect intelligence at the expense of justice and bringing people and putting these people in jail. So that shows you that there is a track record here from the United States government, from the CIA Inspector General report, in which even in a much lower level scenario, that they don't want this information to come to light. Not because they necessarily care about the justice, they care at the end of the day about sources and methods, and about at all costs, they want to keep all of these people out of open court, because those people might start talking a whole lot of shit while they're on the transcript, on the record, and they might say, hey, you put me in federal prison, I'm going to tell the whole world what I know. And in exchange, they're let off with probably the worst crime that you can commit, you know, literally, in my opinion, like the worst possible crime that you can commit. We're talking about the sexual abuse here of children as young as 2 and as 6. Second one, and this shows you actually a more systematic one. Shout out to my friend Daryl Cooper, who flagged this case to me. in his podcast. I highly recommend it, the Martyr Made podcast on the Epstein files. So this is something he brought to my attention via his podcast, is that all throughout the 1970s and 1980s, there was this place called the Kincora Children's Home in Northern Ireland, where it was basically a hub and an orphanage for orphan boys who were being systematically abused by intelligence assets known to MI6 and MI5 because and it was basically covered up and ignored because they were key conduits in helping MI5 manage the Northern Irish problem during the Troubles. This is but a clear-cut example of basically
just
how it works
so
with the
everybody
Epstein.
Understands. MI5, MI6 is British intelligence.
These are British intelligence.
And then the Troubles is a time in which there was Irish resistance.
Irish resistance against the UK and Northern Ireland, and it's complicated.
So,
I'm not a full expert.
The argument is in order to manage that resistance, they had these intelligence assets.
Who were sexually abusing children. They knew they were sexually abusing children.
And they let it happen
and
because it was advantageous to
because it was advantageous to continue that intelligence. So what I'm just showing you, though, is that this has all happened in the past.
But just so we can clarify, it doesn't mean MI5 and MI6 are orchestrating the molestation of these children. It means that they're looking the other way, which is equally heinous.
It's honestly worse in my opinion. I actually think it's worse.
Okay, fair enough. Because it is advantageous for what the current administration or what the country wanted at the time. And so you were using this as evidence that intelligence communities have done this
in the past. These are verified incidents. They show us this has happened.
And real quick, it would lend itself to this idea that intelligence communities were aware of what Epstein was doing and was able to look the other way because there was access to certain information
and money
that they wanted. So it would thwart this idea that the government is actively using Epstein as a worker, if you will, to run a blackmail ring, but it would confirm this idea that they were aware of this pedophile sex trafficking ring happening, and they allowed it to happen so as long as that they could continue to use him as an asset.
That's exactly right.
Which I think is an important slice, because I think the internet has taken Epstein and turned him into the Mossad, CIA, government blackmail ring that they use to incriminate the elites, which at this point in time, we don't know if there's any evidence of that, but it seemed like there's overwhelming evidence to his access to these elites and his utility to intelligence services.
Correct. That's exactly right.
And I wonder if it's advantageous for intelligence to have an asset or someone like this that has such a malignant proclivity.
Correct. You're exact. See, this is very important.
Can you go on? Can you continue on?
But just like if basically you have someone that's able to have access to all this information and money, but also is a known pedophile, he's much easier to control and coerce.
So it's like in the hood, if you got a crackhead or a heroin addict that you need him to do some fuck shit, but they always got to come back to you because they're addicted to the thing you got.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the FBI looks the other way on criminals. Actually, Joey, can you Google this? It's like confidential informants commit crimes, FBI. There was a report recently. It came out a couple of years ago that named like the number of crimes that the FBI allowed its confidential informants to commit while it was working with them.
This is Whitey Bulger.
Yeah, but it's not Whitey. It's like it goes way bigger than that.
Whitey would be like the biggest
the perfect example of that.
So the notorious Boston gangster,
of course,
who was always an FBI informant, but they allowed him to continue to run shit in Boston.
I mean, it's thousands of crimes.
Or
like, it's shocking.
Propping a dictator, and they can do whatever they want to their people.
They can do whatever you want as long as you keep certain things.
Oh, you can kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people as long as it's your loyal.
You could say like, I would Google something like confidential informants commit crimes, like FBI admits, something like that. Maybe we can find that. I'm just citing it off the top of my head.
Sorry, in the meantime, but do we have,
since I've looked at it? Go ahead.
Do we have any idea what he's providing that is worth the kids getting?
There it is. Yeah, there we go. FBI allowed informants to commit 5,000 crimes or something like. It's like maybe 5,000 or 50,000. I can't read the headline exactly. I'm trying to cite
5,600.
I'm trying to show everybody that this is business as usual for the federal government.
And just to clarify, not all these crimes are kid fucking. Some of these crimes are drug running.
Most
of
these
crimes are drugs. Yeah. Exactly. There are illegal activities that the FBI is aware of, and they allow these people to operate in these spaces. They know that they're operating in these spaces and being watched, just as long as that information trickles back. For example, if you're a gun runner in America, you want to send some guns to some third world country, the FBI or the CIA is going to be aware of that. They can tap you for that information.
Right.
And they might actually want those guns to get over there.
Yeah.
And they might need somebody like you were describing before, for to ensure that those guns actually get there for their nefarious purposes. But again, I just want to parcel this. It's not like the only crimes being committed are having sex with children. It is quite common that you are using these nefarious characters to carry out the horrible crimes that you cannot be associated, as you pointed out earlier.
Yeah, all business as usual. It's business as usual. It's just extended to the furthest possible one.
Yeah, this is
pedophilia.
That is a great word.
I'm struggling.
Yeah. And we all struggle with that because we're good people.
But
right?
So when you're surrounded
by this, look, it's all how do you commit major crimes, right? It's all a buildup. Like nobody just starts out immediately like going for a $1 billion Ponzi scheme. I mean, one of my favorite books is The History of the Madoff scheme. It starts small, man. It starts with one doctored paper, and then it leads to this, and then it's one lie, it's one quarter, it's just one. That's all. And then you take another, and next thing you know, you're running a $56 billion Ponzi scheme. Okay, and it takes 50 years to get there, but it doesn't happen all overnight. It happens in a permission structure in an environment of crime.
The permission structure is huge.
This might be the most obvious answer in the world, or there is no answer, and that's obvious. What intelligence is he providing? Do we have any idea?
I don't know.
That it's like, oh, well, this is potentially a pedophilia ring involving the most powerful people in the world, and instead of having any kind of justice, this information is worth it.
So let's speculate at this, because this is pure speculation and we have no idea, and this is part of what it would be great to get from files or investigation or a church committee. You know, the church committee actually would be the only answer here. We need a congressional committee.
Church would know about pedophilia.
Do you know what the church committee is? No, it's in the 1970s. It was Senator Frank Church, who was American hero.
No church can help itself, dude.
Why do you call it the church committee? Call it anything else. So go on.
Senator Frank Church in the 1970s exposed COINTELPRO, all of the out-of-control operations by the FBI and the CIA, and he brought the intelligence community to bear post-Watergate, and basically America didn't trust them anymore. Senator Church basically seized on this. He exposed a lot of the issues with the Black Panthers, with COINTELPRO, with the
Can you explain
prostitution.
COINTELPRO to anybody who's watching right
COINTELPRO was a CIA. Is that mind
FBI,
control? What am I thinking of?
No.
FBI is COINTELPRO.
Agent provocateurs.
I'm getting them all
agent provocateurs. You put the FBI agents in peaceful
like
protest,
against the Black Panthers.
Exactly.
So there's that, and then what was the mind control?
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. That's the MK Ultra. He exposed all this, right? So that's why what I'm saying is we need something like that to happen with this.
The intelligence community could be effectively using illegal measures to incriminate people that are not doing actual crimes.
Or acting against their own citizens.
Or acting against their own citizens in violation of the law.
Like he was an arms dealer, money launderer. That's a lot of
by the way, I'm speculating. That's not confirmed. What I'm trying to say is there is a lot of evidence that points in that direction. I can't get further without the documents, without
he was
the
just
verification.
Acting like
he was
what information
knew a lot
could
of
he have
arms
given?
dealers, knew a lot of people who were doing. So look, we can only speculate as to what is exactly happening.
Bare minimum, what we can confirm is that he was involved, obviously outside the child sex trafficking, that he was doing illegal money laundering.
He appears, in my opinion, to have been doing
didn't he get caught at Bear Stearns? Maybe not money laundering, but insider trading.
Yeah, he was doing something that violated compliance rules in the 1980s.
So he's doing illegal stuff with the transfer of money, probably tax evasion, which is quite common when you're dealing with this type of money.
Yes.
But still willing to go to illegal measures to prop up the wealth of the world's elites.
Then he opens up his own firm and only accepts billionaires.
Billionaire, right? It's again like, what are we
That's
doing?
What I'm going to do. I'm going to open up a podcast studio.
Only for billionaires. Well, think about it. Actually, today it would be the equivalent of saying only 20 billion, right? There's not that many people who are worth more than 20 billion.
And what if there was one guy that was managing the money of all the richest people in the world?
Right.
It would be advantageous for the intelligence communities of any country to have access to that guy.
You would actually be quite foolish if you didn't.
If you didn't, you would have to have something. Right.
Exactly. So this is where, again, like we can only speculate. What did they get out of this? In my opinion, in the 1980s, he was obviously financing arms deals. There's just like clear-cut case for me. That's the most useful. Black money is the most useful thing in the world to a U.S. intelligence or Mossad intelligence, Saudi intelligence, any of these other people. Then it gets to the question of the whole blackmail thing. And look, I think there is at least some evidence here in the case of Wexner and others that it appears to look like blackmail was used by Epstein for his personal financial gain. And then we combine the two to where we have hidden cameras that we know about in the Virgin Islands, that we know about in the New York residence, that we know about in Palm Beach. Many of this footage and other things never have been released. We know about the DVDs and other things.
On the cameras, I think it's important to note that it's not simply security cameras. I have cameras in all my homes.
As you should.
Exactly. Like they were wired for audio as well.
That's right.
And they were in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
I don't have, yes.
But I actually think that's another interesting point because that doesn't necessarily mean it's only sexual blackmail.
Oh, I would imagine it's more not that.
Come over to my house for a
let's
meeting.
just talk about something.
Let's talk.
You go to the bathroom and you're like, this fucking weirdo, I got to get the hell out of here. He's a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. And now you got that locked, and then the FBI gets access
Which
to
I think is an
information.
important delineation that you might have some head of state, and let's say they're in the Epstein files as, oh, there is audiovisual blackmail of Bill Clinton or Ehud Barak. It might not necessarily be sexual.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
All right, guys, let's take a break for a second. You need to take care of your mental health, okay? We know how important it is, but we also know how daunting it seems to drive up from a therapist's office every single week, and that's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace makes therapy easy and convenient because you can take your appointments from the comfort and privacy of your own home. You can even talk it out between sessions by sending text messages to your therapist. Talkspace therapy and psychiatry are covered by many insurance plans and employers, including TRICARE for active duty, veterans, and their dependents. Most insured members have a $0 copay. You can easily sign up online and get paired with the licensed provider that's the right fit for your needs. Typically within 48 hours, you can also switch providers at no extra cost. And as a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/flagrant and enter the promo code SPACE80, that is SPACE80, to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/flagrant and enter the promo code SPACE80. Now let's get back to the show.
All right, guys, listen, I know I'm all about Bitcoin, and here's what I've learned. I should not invest in any other coins. Kraken gave us some money to invest. I lost $7,000 last time out of 10.
Wow.
So
It's like
that's
almost
me.
hard
so
to do.
this time, they gave me more money. All I'm doing is Bitcoin. That's it. I'm not fucking around with fart coin anymore. Everybody send me their meme coins. Fuck yourselves. It's Bitcoin only for me. What about you guys?
I think I'm mostly Bitcoin too, and I think I've been doing okay. Little ETH.
You're
little
up the
Sol.
most.
I think I'm up the most, yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't pick them.
But you had a Jewish person pick
Yeah,
it.
you had your handler.
That's
Your
I
smart.
didn't
handler
have
picked
my
it.
Jewish handler pick it.
That's
Yeah,
smarter.
And
you
it's
got-
working out.
Yeah, you're winning.
Also got gold. I mean.
Yeah. A lot of gold, a lot of diamonds. I bought real estate. No, I doubled down on Epstein coin, and it's crushing right now. Dude, I'm through the roof, dude. They should make that. I don't even know if that's
You
a
know
real
they
coin.
don't ever show you the results of how that coin.
Yeah. Trump said there's actually no coin. What the hell? What did I put all my money in? This is crazy.
And then now you're pretty much break even, right?
Yeah, I broke even. Yeah.
But listen, guys, whatever you believe in, Kraken has a special offer going on for all Flagrant fans. You sign up on the Kraken mobile app at kraken.com/flagrant and use the code Flagrant25 and you get $25 in free Bitcoin. That could be worth $1 billion one day.
One day.
You never know. Also, just so you know, if it wasn't clear from me telling you I've lost 70% of my money, this is not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss and is offered to U.S. customers excluding Wyoming, New York, and what is WA? Washington?
Washington.
Oh, goddamn. Excluding Washington,
you
New
were
York,
gonna
and Maine? Maine?
Yeah.
Thank God. Through Payward Interactive Inc.
Let's get to Ehud Barak. This is important because now I want to start making the Israel case specifically. So we already talked about how earlier Epstein. Well, look, I want to present this factually. I don't need people coming with the anti-Semitism accusations. Let's live only in the world
Do people
of fact.
make those accusations
Yeah,
anymore?
absolutely.
Wait, that happens?
Today, right now, this entire thing is gonna be branded anti-Semitic. But well, listen, I don't care anymore. But even though they are going to say that no matter what, we should not be irresponsible and let's live in the world of fact. So go ahead, Joey, and scroll
sounds
down
pretty fucking
to
anti-Semitic,
the thing
yeah.
that I have that says Epstein and Ehud Barak. So let's go ahead and put this up here.
Yeah.
Here are the lists that I compiled just yesterday of every Israeli prime minister who we know who is linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Number one is Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres was the prime minister of Israel in the 1980s. He, according to Ehud Barak himself in the open record, introduced Ehud Barak to Jeffrey Epstein. So that's the first prime minister of Israel that we know is linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Number two is Ehud Omer, who was named as an Epstein associate by the U.S. Virgin Islands in their lawsuit against J.P. Morgan and Chase. I will be honest, Ehud Omer, we have the least amount of information. We only know he was named by the U.S. Virgin Islands as an Epstein associate. Number three, Ehud Barak, as I list there. Connections too vast to paraphrase, all right? And so let's spend some time now on Ehud Barak. Let me return to Netanyahu in a bit. In my document, you can scroll to the Epstein and Ehud Barak section. Ehud Barak stayed for multiple times at Jeffrey Epstein's house. This is confirmed. He flew dozens of times on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet.
But he has nowhere else to stay in New York City.
Yeah, right. He's the former prime minister of Israel.
Where could he stay?
Actually, Joey, can you pull up the photo
it's
of
the nicest
Ehud
place in
Barak?
New York.
Ehud Barak Epstein mansion.
That was my
he
thought.
had a
That was my thought.
This is the biggest problem.
yeah.
You gonna go stay at the Four Seasons?
But, no, I want you guys to see the photo. There's a photo of Ehud Barak walking into the Epstein mansion with his face covered with a scarf up to his nose, and this is pre-COVID times.
Yes.
He says it was cold, but
It was cold. It was cold.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that.
Winters.
Look at that. That's him walking into Jeffrey Epstein's house. That's insane. People don't walk around like that. They don't walk around like that.
That's post-2008.
Sorry. Yeah, and this is post-2008.
So again, we're talking about post-conviction.
Yeah, post-conviction.
He's a registered sex offender.
That's right.
Still staying at his house.
He's staying in his house.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Also, 2015, I have a documented link here.
He might just be cheap and not want to spend.
Epstein funded Ehud Barak.
Hey, you don't know no other Jews or real estate in New York City.
All right, let me continue. Epstein funded Ehud Barak's defense intelligence startup to the tune of millions of dollars. So that, in my opinion, is one of the real smoking guns. Because what did I talk about earlier with Robert Maxwell? Was the funding of software used by the Israeli government to do what? To spy on the United States.
Now, this software would be used to spy everywhere, I imagine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course, like Pegasus, right? And
right.
all of these other things are right. So it's not just the United States, but it's everybody. All right. But here in this case, Epstein entered partnership worth millions with Ehud Barak in 2015, post-conviction, registered sex offender. Okay, let's continue. Barak is who? The former, not only prime minister, the former head of military intelligence inside of Israel. Let's continue beyond that. And let's say ask about Ehud Barak and what else he did. I have this in the Wexner section. If you want, it is... Let me find it here. I may not have actually put a citation. You can Google it if you would like. Epstein, who was also named by Leslie Wexner as a trustee of the Wexner Foundation, paid Ehud Barak $2.3 million to complete 2 consulting reports, one of which he never finished. Okay? $2.3 million paid by the Wexner Foundation to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, for one of which he never finished. Okay? I'm just saying, good work if you can get it.
Yeah,
right? 2.3 million. Everybody out there, if you're struggling with your bills and your mortgage, this is insane. All right? This is insane. For purposes of what? We don't know. Now let's return to the Wexner Foundation.
Why would he be paying him?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
What's
my
going
question.
on?
No, I guess I'm saying, like, why is that advantageous? Like, if
because it's like a jobs program for all of these former Israeli officials, and it's basically a network where, and this is actually fits what I was about to continue. The Wexner Foundation funds a fellowship right now at Harvard University, which, by the way, of course, also had connections with Jeffrey Epstein. And what did we see? Is that the Wexner Foundation has for decades now sponsored programs where Israeli officials, including military officials and civil government officials, come to the United States to, quote, learn leadership. And it's known as one of the largest networks of like highly influential Israeli government officials who come to the United States and basically link up with one another as a very, very powerful nexus. So the Wexner Foundation is involved.
And why is that incriminating that they come here and learn leadership?
Well, it's not incriminating. I'm just saying that the Wexner, this is an American. He's a billionaire. He's funding AIPAC and all of these various Zionist causes. He's also paying weirdly $2.3 million to a former Israeli prime minister. This is a foundation which Epstein has a lot of control over. By the way, just to be fair to them, they have claimed that Epstein had no influence over that decision. Okay. I mean, he was, basically running it, and he had power of attorney by Leslie Wexner. But, to be fair to the Wexner Foundation, I mean, I just think it's crazy. This is insane to pay $2.3 million to Ehud Barak.
So take me down that line of thinking.
Yeah.
If you pay him that money, what does that mean?
Yeah, for what? It's like to what?
But
to what
take
end?
me down
I
there.
don't know. I
give
mean,
me an alleged. Give me a hypothetical.
My hypothetical is that these are basically ways to create slush funds that perhaps he was using, and others to fund other intelligence operations. So this returns me to the black money point, is that you need legitimate ways to wash money.
Okay, so
nonprofits are great ways.
He's giving the money to him, and then he's doing, nefarious.
Who knows what he's
activities
doing?
with it.
I don't know what he's doing.
Is there a way of looking at it where you go, Jeffrey Epstein is working for U.S. intelligence, and in a way, this is how they're bribing Israeli intelligence.
You very may
to
well be onto
loyal
something.
To
right.
U.S.
And this is why I will never sit here and say he was solely a Mossad agent or a Mossad asset, solely a U.S. asset. I think he was a hired gun. He would work for anybody.
For anybody.
And everybody would want to work with this person
because he has access to all the rich
to the
and
world's
famous people.
money, to the world's rich and the famous. He can tell you the secrets. I mean, this is the gold standard of an intelligence asset in the United States of America, the capital of the global empire, right? New York City, the capital of global finance. People, even private business people, would want to be friends with Epstein because, like, hey, what's going on with that deal? Are they going to, do a leverage buyout with this person? And Epstein would be like, maybe I can find out for you, right? And calls up this person. So there are a lot of reasons to want to have access to all of this,
and why
much
would
of which is very
Barack
beneficial.
Why would he want access to Epstein?
Well, that is one of those things where I actually think the relationship was the other way, because it might be just a quid pro quo situation. Like, you're Ehud Barak, you're the former prime minister of Israel, and Jeffrey Epstein is a guy who made his money somehow, and you need millions of dollars from him, not a legitimate, venture capital firm. I think that the reason that they want sketchy money is because it was probably, in my opinion, some sort of intelligence front. And that this is exactly, he's fulfilling his purpose. The financier uses the money, the dirty money, or the, untraceable money to fund future spyware, intelligence companies. This gets to the front company discourse. It also shows us that he was involved in this in 2015. It wasn't that long ago, okay? It was only 10 years ago that he was still doing this. So it shows that even post-conviction, he's continuing the behavior, which is very suspicious, in my opinion. So that's where we are with Ehud Barak. Now let's return to Netanyahu, because this is a fun story, actually. So Netanyahu in 2011, I have that screenshot in my tweet if you want to go ahead and put that up there. Netanyahu met with the JP Morgan exec I mentioned earlier, Jess Staley, all right? So Jess Staley in 2011 emails Epstein, and he said, I got to find the exact text. I don't have it here in the document, but I tweeted it a couple of days ago. Let me just go ahead and find it, because the wording of it is genuinely remarkable, where he sends him an email and he said something like, against all odds. Yeah, here we go. In 2011, JP Morgan executive forwarded an email to Epstein. Against all odds, we have been granted a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Epstein replies, surprise, surprise. The U.S. Virgin Island notes that he was a key conduit in brokering meetings like this. And so here's from the U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit, where they note some of the world's dignitaries: Prince Andrew, Ehud Barak, Netanyahu, David Gergen. My point is around this is this JP Morgan CEO is able, from the email discourse, he's like, against all odds, we were granted a meeting with Netanyahu. And Epstein replies, surprise, surprise.
Why can't JP Morgan get a meeting with Netanyahu?
Exactly. And first of all, it's super weird. Why wouldn't you be able to get a meeting with Netanyahu?
You're JP Morgan, you're one of the biggest banks in the world.
Why would you forward that to Epstein? And Epstein's like, yeah, you're welcome for hooking it up. I think it's weird. Now, none of these point perhaps to like direct employee relationship. It points to a vast
network
influence and network, which was useful perhaps at times with the U.S. and Israeli intelligence.
But this looks like Epstein has influence over Israel, not the other way around.
Well, it
looks like the
but it
US
could be bidirectional.
Right, of course. I'm just saying in this certain circumstance, it's like, hey, we need to meet with this guy. We can't happen. And he's like, I'll tell him what to do.
Well, yeah, but it's not really influence. It's more acting as an agent for major financial institutions to hook them up with the Israeli government. Now, look, I mean, Netanyahu, by the way, has never answered any questions about this. But Ehud Barak has,
You're saying in his Nelk Boys interview, he didn't talk about this?
Is that out yet? By the way, do we know?
No.
What's up with Steiny and them? I don't understand. Like, bro, I said this. I was like, you have a newsy interview. You got to release that shit. You can't just hold a prime minister interview for a week. It's fucking crazy.
I'm sure
your Nelk thing is still one of my favorite things I've ever seen. That's legendary.
How long keg stand?
Yeah.
How many Happy Dads do you think you can drink in 30 seconds?
He's literally, I forget the one who was annoying with you, who's literally gonna like be on his phone while BB is talking or some shit.
Well, the thing about Israel Palestine, what kind of watch is that?
What a joke. All right,
Wait, so, okay, to play devil's advocate for some of these people who would be on Epstein's list, and you brought this up earlier, but like, theoretically, if I'm a Bill Gates and this guy has access to all of these people and I'm concerned with wealth, I guess he's already been convicted of the pedophilia, so even associated with him is crazy. But theoretically, it's like, well, he could connect me with that billionaire and that billionaire and that.
Well, that's what happened in Bill Gates' case. So Bill Gates, if you guys remember, well, it's complicated. There's a lot of reporting about it, but allegedly, you know, he would use Epstein for marriage advice and things like that. Sketchy. She's
too old.
Yeah, that's what came out. You know, I mean, actually, this is important on the Bill Gates story. Melinda Gates divorced him over the Epstein thing, and
is that confirmed?
That's what she says.
Okay, well, that's the timing.
That's what she says.
Like, I would say that too.
But guys,
yeah, of
let's
course
stick
you would
with
say
that,
that.
because here's the thing: it had to be bad because Bill Gates was an obvious philanderer for over 20 years for their entire marriage.
Yeah.
So what was worse than that to get you to divorce him?
Yeah.
There had to be something. I think there was something sketchy that she found out. Like, look, maybe she was just appalled by all the reporting, but she knew. Look, everybody at Microsoft knew that Bill Gates was having affairs. This is already documented. It's out there, like, in terms of his conduct with women over the last 20 years.
Yeah,
so it can't have been as bad as...
To support
he
what
was
you're
just
saying, there's an income level where it's like, come on.
They're multi-billionaires.
You know what I mean? Come on.
They probably are not even in the same country, right? They're both like vast estates that can just move around on private jets. So... Again,
oh my God! I did not
really
like that he had. This is Melinda Gates. I did not like that he had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
No, I made that clear to him. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. My heart breaks for these women. Yeah, I guess you got to say that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where there might be something else
actually
going on.
feel that way.
Sorry. Do we know the first time? What's the gap between the divorce and the first time this guy meets Epstein? Because I think there's like 12 years where Melinda could have left.
Yeah. Do you not like that it got out?
Well, that's part of it. I mean,
so if you don't like that it got out,
maybe you shouldn't know.
I do not know.
Maybe you shouldn't know.
No,
I
I
don't
think
know
she could have
what-
left earlier if she was so bothered by
Right,
it.
but I think what Alex is saying, maybe she didn't know. that
yeah,
maybe
no,
she didn't know.
I think
should have known.
I think she didn't know because all of the stuff is about his. But and I think actually she may know even more than we all do about what was going on in some of those rooms.
Wait, why?
But, well, maybe it's like she asked him to come clean and he came clean, or maybe there's some stuff in court documents and lawsuits and others, but have been alleged against him that again could have been
what's the
catch and kill.
settlement like? That'll
We have
tell
no
you
idea.
everything.
It was like billions. I mean, we can look at it.
mean, it's
I don't know
gonna be
exactly
billions.
what it was. Yeah, it's gonna be billions no matter what. So it's what was it, 40 billion, something like that? Maybe 50. And control of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah,
agreed
yeah,
to continue
yeah. She knew.
those two things together.
Yo,
So
Melinda.
there's something going on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I'm saying. All right. 12.5 billion grant for her philanthropic work.
Can you hit show more?
Maybe I'm thinking.
Melly Mel. Oh, they
I
had
don't
no
know.
proof.
I mean,
they had
yeah.
no prenup.
Division
so she
of
got to
large-
give it no matter what.
Right. Yeah. She was going to get it no matter what. So let's be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So anyway, my thing is like, why now? I just think again, she knew about his cheating. Like it had to be worse than that. I don't really know what it was.
Or just public.
Or public. It's possible. But Bill Gates met with Epstein because he was trying to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Bill Gates wanted the Nobel Peace Prize for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Epstein's like, oh, I can make that happen. And why? Like that's the questions. Like why even after being a registered sex offender? Like Andrew, you and I are in a weird position.
That's why Trump was cool with him. He just
all of
wanted
us
the peace.
I'm sure all of us as public people, we get invited to dinners like all the time, right? And I very rarely go because it's like
never go.
annoying.
Yeah.
But I used to go. But like what I always do is just a cursory Google search, right? And if somebody invited me to dinner, you know, and was a registered sex offender, which is one of the very first things going to pop up, I'm not going. But George Stephanopoulos went. Bill Gates went. Reid Hoffman.
Why do you think they went?
Peter, I don't know.
Yeah, how do you have time? I
Yeah,
barely
it's like-
hang out with my real friends.
Right, exactly. It's like, what is going on here? You know, and not only you guys are doing dinners or whatever, you're all like wiring money to each other. The Bill and Melinda Gates, or like the Nobel Peace Prize, and there's all kinds of people we don't even know about because there has not been yet a release of the files.
But
The
isn't
fact
it like
is-
the rich people stuff that you were saying before? It's like, well, he's going over there. I guess it's cool if we all go.
Yeah, but
If
but it's still
the circles
doesn't the
is that
sex
small.
offender thing register at any point? Like
No,
at
of course,
what point?
for
Yeah,
us.
once they're
At
convicted.
what point does it register to be like, oh, we're not doing this?
I can
all
understand not
right
Googling,
now.
to be honest with you. I probably wouldn't Google. But
Come on,
once
dude.
somebody's convicted, fuck that,
no,
dog.
yeah.
Fuck
Also,
that.
your staff is going to Google.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Like all these meetings are going through your staff.
And I'm
You're
not worried.
exactly
I'm not
right.
worth enough to have a staff. If I was, they would, hey, Google
Bro, these
anybody else.
assistants, you're not getting in the
vet
fucking
everybody.
door.
Think about
you
how
know?
many people were terrified of just coming on the podcast.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Almost terrified to come on a podcast,
Yeah,
right? You have some of the most powerful people in the world that are going to meet up with a convicted pedophile.
Right.
Yeah, you know what's going on.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But you said in the 90s
Yeah.
it was already common knowledge that he likes them young. So
yeah,
it's
but
like
there's a big difference being a registered sex offender. Yeah, there's plausible deniability before that.
But they all rationalize it. I'm sure their staff says, yeah, look, he was given such a light sentence because it was kind of bullshit.
Yeah,
the charges were trumped up.
You know that the girl was underage.
And so the whole thing was overblown, and you're about to get $2 billion in a Peace Prize in your foundation. Yeah. And then you go, all right, for $2 billion, I can have a closed door meeting with the guy.
This is the weirdest thing. It's the reputation laundering. Like, again, we're talking about Bill Gates. We're talking about MIT. We're talking about the Ivy League universities. We're talking about some of the world's most professional and smartest scientists who are going over to his house for dinner, who are, accepting grants for his work at the MIT lab, all of this is post-conviction. Guys, you don't just give money to MIT. They have enough money. They don't just take it from anyone. They do extensive background research to make sure that you can put your name on something to that point, and they know what's happening.
Wow. I have a friend of mine who has a real estate fund or whatever, and he got investment from these institutional places like MIT and the amount of background
the due diligence must be insane.
It's insane. And he often criticizes some the developers who just they raise money in the community, and he's like, yeah, that's bullshit, because if you lose their money, it's no big deal. There's nobody to answer to. When you get money from an institution like the UC fund, like UC
pension fund or
pension
whatever.
fund, exactly. The amount of due diligence, the SEC is on your phone.
That should be.
You are getting looked at constantly.
Yes.
So it's not like that's not going to come up. It does come up, and they look the other way, which is peculiar.
It's weird.
Very
weird.
weird.
Last thing, I actually didn't put this in my notes, and this really, my goal here is to just emphasize all the connections and what could possibly still yet to be released. So please Google the New York Financial Services report on Epstein, which regards Deutsche Bank. Now, this report, I read it in 2020. It's one of the craziest things I ever read because it is a description of financial behavior at this bank that any normal individual would never get away with. Not only looking the other way, holding high-level meetings, being like, guys, we're not in compliance right now. They're like, this is violating banking rules. He is taking out millions of dollars in cash, $9,900 at a time. They're not reporting it to the feds, which you're supposed to. He's wiring money to Eastern European women, an obvious sex trafficking wing. Post-conviction, which, by the way, post-conviction, they weren't even really supposed to be doing business with them for the reputation of the bank, but they cite in the Deutsche Bank settlement with the New York Financial Services internal emails where they're like, hey, he's really good for business because he connects us with a whole lot of people. These are out in the open, right? And inside, you literally watch as lower level compliance people who don't know what's up flag to their bosses, and they're like, guys, what are we doing here? This is violating bank rules. And they're like, hey, shh, stop, right? I mean, I'm talking all the way up to the highest level of the bank where internal conversations are had in multiple times. This violates multiple bank policies. It violates the law, in this case, New York state law, about the way that you're supposed to conduct yourself as a financial institution, looking the other ways, all these insane wire transfers for millions and millions of dollars. So to me, that's my final thing here. These are the files I want. I want the actual banking records. I want the LLC formation documents.
Follow the money.
I want the trust. Yeah, from The Wire, my favorite quote, from Lester Freeman. If you start to follow the money, you don't know where the fuck it's going to take you. And that's really what the whole story is about. And yes, I understand the salacious details, and I spent a lot of time on it here, the pedophilia investigation and all of that, but it's secondary to the level of influence that he had. And to the extent that it mattered because he was so important in some respect that everyone was either able to look the other way or enable it or empower it, and to make it happen in such a systematic way that involves all the world's most powerful elite. So that's my final thing, is release the Epstein files that actually matter and show us who he was. It's not just about intelligence, it's about the financial network. And the reason I think that it's being covered up here is because it does implicate everybody. I think it implicates multiple governments, specifically the Israeli government. I think it also implicates the United States government. I think it's very uncomfortable for the world's richest and most powerful elite. It shows it in the Bush administration, it shows the Trump administration, it shows the Biden administration. You sat on some of these. Some of the most powerful and influential people in the whole world. It's not necessary that they're on tape, but perhaps they're financially entangled. Perhaps the tapes were used, at a time. And that's, I think, the most disappointing thing about this. So my goal here was to give people the language they can use as to why it validates your feelings as to why something is being covered up. And there's a reason they don't talk about this. They call you a conspiracy theorist. These are all facts. Everything that I've laid out here.
Can I say one thing? That was awesome. Thank you. I don't know. I don't know what the non-sexual version of being turned on is, but that was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like the blackmail ring, the sexual blackmail ring for the global elites is the conspiracy. Simply following the money outside of the child sex trafficking might be what incriminates the most people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely will.
And
yes.
It's almost like it benefits them for there to be focus on the child sex ring because they might not be tied to it.
Or to talk in stupid terms of like client list. And it's like, guys,
they're all on the island. They're all on the island fucking the girls.
Right.
It's like, as long as the focus is on that, it will almost be a letdown to find out, oh, actually, they didn't have sex with any girls, but he was giving the Ehud Barak $2.3 million or whatever. And then the people go, it's only $2.3 million. What's the big deal? We thought they were having sex. It's actually like to their benefit for the public to believe this blackmail, this sexual blackmail ring, and then be quote unquote like let down by we should hope that there are less people having sex with children, by the way. We all want that to not happen. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to shine light on what's going on over here and understanding his influence and why he was able to operate with impunity despite being a registered sex offender. That's the thing that seems so peculiar and lends itself to conspiracy. Why was he able to behave in this manner? Why were the higher ups at his bank able to thwart their responsibility to the SEC, to their investors?
In 2 weeks, if I withdraw $9,900 in 2 weeks, the federal government's knocking on my door. Like JP Morgan is going to flag my account.
I thought it has to be over 10 grand for them to do it.
But if it's 9,900, they have a mandatory reporting, but if they have things in the bank to make sure that you're not, if it looks suspicious to do 9,900, 2 weeks and they're like, all right, he's trying to violate, trying to make sure that he doesn't come under reporting. We're going to the feds. We're notifying the IRS. The IRS, by the way, again, has all of this documentation.
Yeah, the bank's not so stupid to be like, oh, it wasn't 10,000,
right? Yeah, they're not dumb. Right, exactly. They have software. They literally Palantir. That's what they use Palantir for, to automatically flag all of these suspicious activities. My point is only that all of this exists, and you, as Americans, you guys need the language to be able to know what to ask for. I was telling Mark earlier, one of the reasons why it took so long to get COINTELPRO and MK Ultra is that it took people breaking into a warehouse to learn about the specific code words so that they could then FOIA and ask to investigate.
Oh, wow.
Without knowing what to ask for, you don't know what to ask for. It's an unknown unknown, in the words of Donald Rumsfeld. Like, it's one of those things where you can't even begin to go down the rabbit hole if you don't even know where to start.
This is interesting.
Yeah. And this is why, and by the way, again, there are very, very powerful people right now today who are trying to make sure you don't look at this. You have the Prime Minister of Israel, former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett. He never worked for Mossad. There's an entire influencer set right now. Mark Levin, now it includes the President of the United States, all of these like kind of Zionist influencers who are calling you an anti-Semite because they say that there's no evidence. And they define the terms to be like, he worked for Mossad. I'm not saying that he directly was an employee for Mossad. He was run from the very beginning. I'm saying that he shows all of the hallmarks, to use an infamous phrase, of being some sort of an asset working with these various intelligence agencies. And I think that stuff is so dirty that they just don't want to get into it. And this is where Trump, I mean, we have to be honest. We have to call it out. Bro, you ran on this. Yeah. I have the evidence here that we can go through of like what they said in 2023 and so what they say today.
Yeah, plus the 7 congressmen that voted against Ro Khanna's amendment.
I know.
Like, that's blatant as you.
All right, guys, let's take a break for a second. Listen, it's summer. Grill season is upon us.
Yes.
And if you're the type of guy who takes pride in a perfectly seared steak, like a real man, it's time to stop messing around with flimsy kitchen gear. That's why you need HexClad, the cookware that's serious about giving you the perfect sear. Not only do HexClad pans give you that perfect sear, they're durable, they're easy to clean up, stainless steel strength, toxin-free, non-stick convenience, and they look damn good on that stovetop. But the real game changer is HexClad's Japanese Damascus steel knives. These things are stupid sharp, perfectly balanced, and tough enough to handle everything from carving up a tomahawk rib buy to dicing onions like a pro. And most importantly, everything comes with a lifetime warranty. Buy it once, use it forever. And right now, you can get 10% off your order with our exclusive link. Just head to hexclad.com/flagrant and level up your kitchen before your next cookout. Cook better with HexClad. Remember, take pride in not just your perfectly grilled steak, but in the exceptional tools you use to create it. For a limited time, get 10% off HexClad with our exclusive link at hexclad.com/flagrant. Support the show and cook with gear as serious as your passion at hexclad.com/flagrant. Let HexClad know Flagrant sent you and experience the ultimate upgrade in your kitchen with HexClad's superior performance. Now let's get back to the show. All right, guys, let's take a break for a second. I'm actually bummed that we don't have any more of these things on us. And the reason we don't have them is because we devour them. Okay, they're the first thing anybody grabs when they come into the studio. They're groons, okay? What are groons? Well, instead of having the powders and the pills and all this other stuff to get your multiple supplements a day, what if you made them into gummy bears? That's what groons did. They're smart. They use their brain. Gummy bears are easy to consume. They're fun to consume. We love consuming them. You're eating gummy bears and you feel healthier by doing it, okay? This isn't a multivitamin greens powder probiotic, okay? It's all those things and then some at a fraction of the price, and most importantly, it tastes amazing. Being healthy has never been more convenient or tasted better. Toss these in your beach bag. Just carry them wherever you go. You're traveling, boom. Make sure you're getting all of your vitamins that are necessary. You wanted a supplement that you can enjoy. This isn't a chore. It's something to look forward to. So right now, you go to www.gruns.co. Get up to 52% off. Use the code FLAGRANT. Let's get back to the show. But we were in this this very interesting media spin in the last few days where, I was doing what I thought we're supposed to do, which is hold our elected officials accountable for the promises that they say they will make. I didn't realize that. Now I know better that you're just supposed to let them do whatever the fuck they want despite them promising.
As long as you're consistent.
Right. Yeah, you just have to be consistent.
That's right.
But yeah, to that note, I've thought about this a lot. I actually think that when the person you voted for is in power, that's when you have to be the loudest.
You're exactly right. Thank you for saying that.
Because that's the only opportunity for you to get the things that they promised enacted.
Yes.
When someone that you did not vote for is in power, there's nothing you can do because they're not going to do the things you asked for anyway. So you should be stomping the pavement. You should be clamoring. And when they're not doing the things, you should be going, hey, this is not what I voted for. This is the thing you want. This is the thing. These are against everything that you said. Not everything, but
otherwise
most
you're
of
in a cult. You're in a cult because everybody's trust the plan. No, I actually don't trust the plan. During the Iran
thing. I hate that
thing,
40 chess shit. I hate to trust the process. How about I trust what the fuck you said you were going to do, and how about you do it?
Thank you. I mean, again, and this is important. Everybody is always oh, there's a split in the MAGA base. I actually think MAGA, by and large, will always kind of support Trump, but that I'm going to define the terms narrowly. And this is kind of where we're all speaking to.
Yeah.
The people we're speaking to are not MAGA, maybe some of them. A lot of them are disaffected. They're men. They're people who are tangentially interested in politics. And the reason why the Epstein story was important to them is it confirmed basically the way that they thought about the international elite. And they saw Trump and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino as those who would work to usurp that power.
A conduit to justice.
Exactly. And for them to watch that betrayal now that's happening is one that only confirms the way that the system basically works. And it causes very uncomfortable questions here.
I was saying this yesterday, but it's if I wanted to vote for somebody that was going to keep the Epstein files under wrap, that was going to extend the foreign wars and was going to increase the budget, I would have voted for Kamala.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, probably would have done it more competently. I'll say it. I'll just say it.
Because they would do way more. Yeah, it would have been very easy.
Yeah,
sweep it on to them.
Then we wouldn't have had to live through this last 6 months of whatever bullshit is happening in the current day. I mean, literally today there is Joey. You want to go ahead and pull this up? You can go on my Twitter feed. Donald Trump is sending $10 billion of new offensive weapons to Ukraine. Not only that, by the way, it actually came out from the Financial Times that he reportedly told Zelensky, the Ukrainians leaked this part of the phone call. Who knows if they're telling the truth, but the Trump administration has not denied it, is Donald Trump asked Zelensky if Ukraine could hit Moscow and actually asked them, hey, Zelensky, Vladimir, he said, do you have what you need to be able to hit Moscow, to hit St. Petersburg? These are the World War III fears that I You guys know the last time we were spending an hour on Ukraine. So you can disagree with me if you'd like. He said he wasn't going to do that.
So here's the thing, and this is where I have like a little bit. I give him a little bit of wiggle room, and maybe it was just hubris. I think Trump actually thought that he was going to walk in. I think Trump actually thought that the only reason there are wars is because of lobbyists lobbyists in government basically going, "Hey, we need to sell more military weapons. So let's have some wars around." So he's like, "Once I get in, I'll just call it Vlad, and I'll be like, yo, Vlad."
He was already president once, man. He
knows the game.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough, and that's very fair. And then that could be my naivete, and I'll be held accountable for that, right? And I guess I'm like hoping best case scenario, because at the end of the day, I don't care what fucking side you're on. You don't want to see hundreds of thousands of people get murdered.
Yeah, that's right.
You do it for profit.
Yeah.
You do not want to see hundreds of thousands of people get murdered for profit. So you can say I told you so. You can do all these other shit, but at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself: do you want to see hundreds of thousands of human beings get killed for profit?
And millions, actually, now.
Millions. I personally don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I personally don't. Right. So what I'm going to do is, if there's somebody that says I aim to stop the foreign wars, and there's another person that says, well, we got to do what's right to keep on fighting. All I hear is less people dead, more people dead. Yeah. If you can sleep at night voting for the person that says more people dead over the person that says less people dead, that's fine. I can't.
Yeah.
That's not for me.
Same.
That's not for me. Exactly. I see what the fuck Gaza looks like, and I'm like, I want that to stop.
Yeah.
I see what the fuck is happening in Ukraine and Russia, and I want that to stop. So I don't feel that, you regret whatever. I don't regret a fucking second for voting for the guy who said that less people are going to die.
Also, all the things about he lied, he's a liar. I don't know, man. He promised he would overturn Roe vs. Wade the first time, and so I thought he could get shit done.
The January 6th protesters, he was like, I'll pardon all them, and he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
it's just important also to say what promises are being kept, what are not. All right, so immigration, I actually say he's kept a lot of his promises.
Unfortunately,
but we'll argue about this later whenever we record for my show. But my point around here is let's look specifically. Epstein. The Epstein memo is released when? The day before Benjamin Netanyahu visits the United States of America for the third time in 6 months.
July 4th weekend.
President of the United States. We have Benjamin Netanyahu, who, by Trump's own account, attacked Iran by the U.S. green light, where U.S. diplomacy was used as a ruse in order for the Israelis to conduct a military operation. We have United States military assets that were used to bomb Iran, which is, gotta be one of them. Like you said, you had a presidential campaign where, yes, Trump would always say, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear bomb. And I know this, and maybe I was too close to it. I knew many of the people involved, like in the actual decision making, and I know that they have ridiculed people who have, quote, wanted to bomb Iran for years. So then to watch that all just flip around, and now President Trump is the greatest deal maker and strength artist of all time, when you would have ridiculed this level of logic long before, and we have all of this reporting that actually nuclear, it's like actually the nuclear program really wasn't destroyed, and the reason that you could look at that is that the Israelis are leaking it, right? You know. Joe, if you want to pull that up, Israel intelligence says Iran nuclear facility not destroyed. This is from the New York Times a couple of days ago.
Oh my God!
And so look,
so now there's a reason to continue.
Now we got to continue, right? And it's like, but I was told that the 12-day war was the only time it was ever going to happen. Well, do you guys want to do some history? All right. Yeah. So in 1981, Israel took out the Iraqi nuclear reactor. They bombed it, and they said we have solved the Iraqi nuclear program question for all time. What did we end up invading Iraq for, Mark? For WMDs, right? And what actually happened as a result of that is that the nuclear program was driven underground, and Saddam actually was more convinced than ever that he needed to acquire nuclear weapons, to the point where he almost tried to create an image where he was having nukes, which caused the United States to invade him in 2003. In 2007, Israel did what? It struck the Syrian reactor and the nuclear program, and the decision point beyond that was, listen, it's just about the nukes. It's not about regime change. Does anyone want to tell me what happened to the Syrian regime? It was replaced by whom? Al-Qaeda. On behalf of whom? Israel, all right? Yeah. Israel literally supported the Syrian jihadist government. And ironically, today, they're actually bombing them, because now the Al-Qaeda government is acting like Al-Qaeda and persecuting religious Druze minorities in the country. Yeah. And by the way, their justification, the Israelis for bombing them, is that Syria has moved across the new border that Israel has declared for itself by seizing parts of Syria. Now, we are supporting Ukraine for what? Because Russia invaded them. What is a seizure of territory as a result of a regime change operation in Syria? What is that a violation of norms?
Rules
may I
for
say?
thee and not for
of the
me.
rules-based international order and the way that a civilized nation would conduct itself?
Well,
a Western nation?
I think the concern here is really like, if you are an autonomous nation, you got to handle your candle. So if you want to do all this stuff in the Middle East,
be my guest.
that's on you.
Yeah, but you bear the consequences.
And exactly, it
and
seems
you pay
like,
for it.
It seems like we bear the consequences.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I think that's where like an important fracture right here. If Israel's like, all right, we're going to go about it alone, and this is what we think
fine,
is the
go
best
for
for
it.
our safety.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you go do that. The problem is every time they're about to go about it alone, they say we'll go about it alone. I think we get a phone call a few hours later, and it seems like we go back it up.
Right, that's right.
And you can really do whatever you want in the world with impunity if America has your back no matter what.
Yes.
And I think that's the kind of imbalance of power right there. And it definitely feels like there's an imbalance in terms of the relationship, in terms of what we're offering each other. And now we're in a circumstance where, like, the war, against Hamas has gone 2 years. And you look at them, and Americans are starting to go like, "What? It's really kind of destroyed." I feel like you did it.
Not kind of, like, it's destroyed.
Yeah, it's destroyed. And then there's all these people and I think Americans are starting to be like, okay, so we're paying for this. I can't buy an apartment. I can't buy a house. I got $300,000 worth of school loans, but we're still selling billions of dollars over here. And you can't begrudge Americans for starting to feel like there's an imbalance in this relationship.
Not even begrudge. I mean, honestly, America, like,
I
it's
think
been this way for years.
But I
we
think
just got to wake up now.
But I think the important thing to understand is, like, it's not saying that an independent country can't go do what it needs for its salvation.
Right.
You just have to bear the consequences for those actions.
Yeah.
And I think Americans are starting to feel like we bear the consequences, at least financially right now.
You're absolutely
And if we end up in some sort of ground invasion in Iran, we will bear the consequences.
There's no question. What a nation of what? I don't forget the population of
9
Israel.
million or something like
9
that, 8 million,
They're going to be able to invade a country of 90 million.
Yeah.
By the way, yes, I do know the population of Iran.
I think we all know.
Thank you to Tucker Carlson. But look, let's really dwell on this. Like, yes, what's happening in Gaza is being funded by the United States of America, and there's a large constituency here in America that says that's necessary for Israel to take out terrorism, whatever the hell that means. Apparently requires killing at the minimum of like 17,000 children. I personally don't think civilized Western nations conduct themselves in that manner. And everyone's like, well, what would you do? I was like, America has the template, guys. Look, I will not defend the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Do you know how many thousands of American service members died and were wounded in missions to protect Iraqi civilians? That was on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, where the American service members are maimed and were blown up to protect Iraqi civilians from an intra-civil war.
This is a really...
That is how you conduct a counterterrorism operation.
I think the point that you're making is really important.
Yes.
Right? Is that in an effort, I imagine, to save Israeli lives, which I do empathize with because I want to save American lives.
That's right.
What they're doing is conducting war that would save the most Israeli lives, but unfortunately kills the most Palestinian lives.
Yeah, that's right.
And what you're innocent Palestinian life. And then what you're making the argument is, in Iraq, instead of us doing that, which we could have absolutely just
it would have
flattened
been
the
easy.
entire
We had the
thing.
greatest bomb. Who do you think sells all these bombs to Israel? Where's it coming from?
But we made a decision to do that boots on the ground, which cost American lives, which was deeply regrettable. I don't want a single American life.
Me either.
But I think that is where we can put ourselves in a position of criticism for the way the war is being waged, because we have been in that circumstance
twice.
And I think that's
in
one piece
Afghanistan.
It's a really good argument.
That is what war is. You have to sacrifice.
Well, okay, no.
from
But I
both
think
sides.
there's two types of war. So this is the thing. They said it's to get rid of Hamas. And in that way, we are not at war with the Palestinian people. We are at war with Hamas. So how would you conduct that war? We have an entire 20 years of experience, the United States military, where what we do is we want to separate the terrorists from the civilian population. So we make sure that the civilians are protected. Soldiers are put in harm's way in order to separate those two and to be able to kill them. It requires a shitload of city combat. It's brutal. It's very difficult. It's bloody. Ask the Navy SEALs, ask the Marines, all the people who had to participate. But it was semi-successful, at least in 2009 in the surge. It reduced the amount of civilian casualties as a result of the Iraqi civil war. But the other way to fight is when you're at war with the population and you want complete and total destruction.
Yeah.
That's when you fight like the United States on Japan in 1945.
And I agree with
and
what you're
what's
saying.
more analogous to what we're happening? So we can look at the intention. All I'm saying is, Akash, it's the intention and the words matter. And the intention is obvious that they are actually at war with the population themselves, right?
Not just Hamas the terrorist group.
Not just Hamas the terrorist
which is very interesting.
And I think that's a very important point for people to digest,
and
is to look at the conduct.
That's the piece that I agree with you, that Americans feel like we're bearing the brunt and all that. But also, when we invade, we are usually told, or when we aid a country in war, we are always told we are on the moral high ground.
Yeah, that's right.
With Ukraine, Russia is invading Ukraine, this country that cannot defend itself. That's why we have to send
Tiny
aid.
little Ukraine.
Now we're looking. And we're seeing who we're supporting.
Right.
And we don't have a moral high ground. They don't have a moral high ground. And yet we keep supporting them. So I agree with you that we feel like, why are we bearing the brunt of this and we don't have jobs? But also, morally, we don't even have a high ground. So why are we supporting when we bear
I
the
wouldn't
brunt?
say Hamas has a high ground either.
No. With the way
I would not
Israel
say
is,
that.
the way Israel is flattening Gaza, we don't have a moral high ground with the way they are doing it. If there were boots on the ground and they're losing civilians, okay, maybe. And Hamas is doing X, Y, Z.
This is why, as America, I actually think we should not talk about moral high ground. I know that
We have no
guys. Every
cannot
time,
stand
like
on
let's
moral high
look at
ground
the
for
history
anything.
of
Yeah.
U.S. moral
Yeah.
interventions. Serbia, disaster.
Oh my God.
Kosovo, disaster.
Yeah.
2003. Goes without saying.
Yeah,
I mean, I can go on forever. Like Libya,
I don't think
Afghanistan.
I don't think we do it with the moral high ground. I think the perception we are sold
I agree
is
with
moral
you.
high ground. And now we're just seeing...
Talking about the story.
I actually, that's why when I argue with liberals, I always tell them, I go, look, guys, I don't think you're doing anybody any good here using words like genocide or anything. It's not because I don't disagree with you per se. It's just that when you couch, for example, and I talked about this last
Then
time.
the debate becomes about the
It's
definition
humanitarianism and genocide. And it's like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about America's national interest.
Yeah, we were talking.
Is this good for us or not?
Mark and I were talking about that, where it's just like now there's this debate on whether or not it's genocide. It's like whatever right below genocide is really bad too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And
mass murder.
And Mark is like, it's like someone says like, I'm not a pedophile. I just like 16-year-olds.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like, yeah,
Isn't there a
still
term for
bad.
that? It's like agiliophile.
Yeah, it's called pedophile. That's it. There's one term. It's just pedophile.
Exactly. But my point beyond that is like, look, let's define things in terms of America's national interests. What good are we getting from this? We're bombing Iran. We had a terror. Do you guys remember the terror alerts in the mid 2000s?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that?
Yeah. Orange today.
Whenever the Iran thing happened, they literally sent out a terror alert across the whole country, and they warned Americans living abroad to expect retaliatory attacks. That's America, our country. We are being felt the pain here.
But you're
right?
just a Qatari asset.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But you know what's funny? The Qatari government hates me because I lived in Qatar. I went to high school there, and I hated it so much that I've talked for years about the mistreatment of the Indian slave laborers.
Disclosing. I've invested. Disclosure.
Okay. No, but I just say it like because it's about being foreign, some form of foreign asset or whatever. Why can't we all just be people talking in our own national interest? And I think the reason that they throw out anti-Semite and race, whatever, on all of this is specifically to shut down this conversation. And the best thing that's ever happened is that we're all here and we can just talk honestly.
It's really unfortunate because I think that it's almost like a permission slip for anti-Semitism in a way.
Oh, you're exactly.
A lot of real
it's increased real anti-Semitism.
But it's not even whether it's increased or not. There are a lot of real anti-Semites out there.
Yeah, that's true.
And then when you throw the term around when you're criticizing a sovereign nation, it gets lumped in with the people who actually do hate people because of their religion and ethnicity.
Right.
And that's the problem I have. Like I always say this other times. Like everybody thinks I'm Jewish, so I get all the anti-Semitism. It exists. Like you guys might not hear it. I get it. I see it. So it's like. You can't just throw that term around so flippantly because then nobody will take it. It's the boy who cried wolf. Nobody will take it seriously when it actually does happen. And it does happen. And it is a real fucking problem. And I'm very concerned about like Jews in America who are dealing with it. And they're concerned. So we got to be very specific. Like the green black guys throwing it around. He's calling the Pod Save America guys anti-Semites.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy, guys.
I think they also dismissed Elon's salute as well. I think the ADL was like, no,
yeah, they
it was a
did.
misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's right. They actually did. The ADL, which, look, I mean, we could argue about that all day long. long, but the ADL is basically an arm for Israel. And this gets to the problem that I have with this whole like anti-Semitism industrial complex is they've conflated criticism of this foreign government with genuine anti-Semitism, which is the worst thing that you could possibly do for anti-Semitism itself, because the term loses all meaning. And look, Zoran, if we want to talk about, I mean, you know, they blasted this guy, anti-Semite. We're in the most Jewish city, in the world, except for Tel Aviv?
Second most,
right. And he just won the Democratic primary and actually a lot of Jewish votes. That should tell you something, guys. That should show that these attacks don't work. But the thing is, unfortunately, in Washington, they still work. It's the worst possible thing that you could be called because of the way, look, it's ideology and it's money, and they're mutually reinforcing. So, for example, and I talked about this on Tucker, you were talking to me about it. I don't get invited to all the things I used to get invited to. And that sounds really silly, but that's the currency of the town. It's fine. I just don't care. I get to come here, right? They're always asking me to connect with you. They're like, hey, man, I think Congressman so-and-so should go on Andrew Schultz. I'm like, I guarantee you he doesn't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not giving you his phone number. That's what I'm telling you. But that's my point, though, right? It's like there's a nice trade-off for me, and I've chosen this. But my point is, with them, the currency of the town is one that is entirely funded by AIPAC or pro-Zionist interests. And the thing is, the way it's so nefarious is it bleeds into everything. It's in people who are working at like a tax foundation to lobby for low taxes are being funded by people who are also very pro-Israel. So if employees there were to, like, let's say make an Instagram post about Palestine, even though it has nothing to do with taxes, they would still be fired. They would be drummed out of the organization. And guys, like, these people don't make a ton of money. Like the lower level, the up and comers. Like when I was in my early 20s, we actually made zero money.
So it's not worth the risk for them.
Of course. I mean, listen, you got to eat. You want to advance. You want to be connected, to get a fellowship, to do whatever. You have to fall in line, even if you don't even work on Israel or Palestine, even if it's just a tangential thing and you're like, it's kind of fucked up.
This is what happened in Hollywood, not specifically with Israel Palestine. I actually don't think at all with that. I think more with identity politics.
Oh, absolutely. You're exactly right.
And I think that people are just really scared that if they had a serious opinion about anything, that they would be like,
you're done,
thrown out. They'd be, and I think now we're moving away from that.
Well, I think that's why what you do is so courageous, man. I'm like somebody who's got to actually like intertwined with like you can say it better than me, but everything I've read, like the studio system has got to be one of the biggest bottlenecks of pop culture in the world. Like it's literally
you just
run by
not care.
A couple of agencies and like,
you know what,
these like movie distributors, and you're fucked if they push them
They
off.
still think he's Jewish. He's good.
But this is why like it's always like annoying when like people will say like, oh, you're just doing this thing for Trump or grifting. It's like grifting. It's like you don't realize how
the real grift is the other way.
I'm in entertainment. I'm not in politics. I'm not in a media company. I'm in entertainment. So like the idea of even having Trump on the pod, and obviously we asked to have Kamala and everybody else, and none of them came. But like that costs us.
Oh yeah.
There's not a financial
doing a hostage video for Kamala. That's you're a grifter. That's grifting. It's like
1,000%. Right? Like
I get it.
Doing those things for Kamala, you would absolutely. And I think that people don't realize that because I think they assume, it's politics better than anybody. It's good versus evil. So as long as you're on the side of good, they don't see it as grift.
Oh yeah,
right. So that there's all these people that are grifting off Trump. Absolutely happens. And then there's people grifting against Trump. The Never Trump thing is a grift as well.
The Lincoln, look it up. But also look up the pedophilia stuff with the Lincoln Project. I'm just throwing that out there. If people want to look into that.
Now I want to look into it. But I guess what I'm saying is like the idea that like in order to grift, you have to be like financially satisfied, I imagine, by that thing. And in the entertainment industry, the industry that we exist in, you're putting yourself in harm's way.
Dude, of course.
So I don't even, like, for example, like just, I had flat out the Netflix people said, and who fucking knows, but like, I'm up for consideration or whatever for an Emmy for life. And I just had people tell me straight up, they're like, listen, dude, like, Trump on the pod, like there's no way that they're going to give you an, it is the best hour comedy that was put out. It should win. It just is. You know what I mean? Like, no disrespect to anybody's there, but it's not as good. Yeah. Right? And it's, and if you want to judge it by any metric, you want to judge it by views, it has more views. If you want to judge it by like impact, you want to judge it by, in my personal opinion, obviously. But like, that's the cost of it. So I think that's the frustrating thing I would imagine for all of us when we're like, no, we're actually curious about talking to these people and having these conversations, and we understand the cost of doing it. and we're willing to take on that cost. There is no risk when you're the anti-Trump grift and you just do all these things, you virtue signal, you say, I told you so to us for criticizing Trump. It's like, if you actually cared, you'd be worried about the midterms and you worried about the elections, and you would see people that were disillusioned by Trump not living up to his promises. If you actually cared and you'd be like, hey, here's an opportunity to bring people into a coalition and in a democracy, gain more votes and potentially win.
Yeah, but you're presuming that they care about those things.
And that's
my point. They don't care about it.
They want clicks and views.
Yes.
They're the exact thing that they're accusing us, but they are so caught up in their own hubris that they don't realize it. And you sit back here and and I watch it and I kind of just laugh at it. But people take it serious. They look at these people and I think it just makes them feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
And they can't disassociate that to like what might be better for the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, something I've always appreciated about this pod is like, we just talk, right? And we can talk to anybody. And I mean, I've known you long enough to know when you were a Bernie guy, right? And I always tell people that.
Still a Bernie guy.
Yeah, no, I know that. And that's why people were so shocked to see you come around. And I was like, guys, you just don't know Andrew, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things where, because I've been able to get to know all of you and, you know, the whole comedy scene or whatever, when people ask about podcast bros and MAGA, I actually think you're very representative of the audience in your turn against people who it seems were like fighting for the system, and to the extent that there was an appeal of Trump. And that's why it explains for somebody who could vote for Trump and also be like, yeah, Mamdani seems America first to me. And it's because the horseshoe
I said
there.
New York first, by the way.
Sorry, New York first. But okay, but
that's
the point
been
is
conflated in news
fine,
a lot.
But the horseshoe there is about talking about the country or the city that we're living in, as opposed to these more establishment interests that you were elected to fight against in Trump's case. But that's the appeal. And somebody was like, oh, you speak to MAGA, right? And I was like, no, I actually don't. I was like, to the extent I have any authority, it's with 18 to 35-year-olds who are interested in politics, the vast majority of whom are pretty bipartisan, a lot voted for Trump. Yeah, but like those people are actually very independent. They do go along with trends and other things. And the most important thing is they both think for themselves.
Yeah, they're not in a cult.
And they are not in a cult. Exactly.
Everybody's capped. Not everybody. There are very loud people that are captured by the cults.
Yes.
And the cults are rewarded online with the algorithms.
Yes, of course.
There's the views, and there's the clicks, and there's the pats on the back, and there's the yes queens in the comments. But in reality, it's not representative of actual people. So when the actual people see people having common sense conversations, which I hope that we have on this podcast, you know, I mean, today, right now, we had the Pod Save guys on the pod.
Nice.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, what's so interesting is like, their criticism was the exact same thing that I was saying. They immediately were like, this reaction that I told you so is like typical fucking liberal dumb shit, where it's just like, we have an opportunity to use this frustration to win, but these people don't care about winning.
Right.
So they're acknowledging the grift as well. And these are the most liberal guys you can imagine.
Well, you know why that they say that? Because they actually won an election. They know how to win a fucking election. They worked for Barack Obama. Like Barack Obama, I mean, do you guys remember the state of Ohio? He won that state. Okay, he won Indiana. That's insane.
And MAGA does it so well, bringing people in. Like, you've seen people go to the protests, like where they pretend to fake protest on the other side. So like liberals will go to the MAGA side, and then all the MAGA people are like, yeah, come over.
Yeah, they're like, hey, come on in, right? But my point actually is the way that was sold. But now that people like you are beginning to speak out, people like me and others, oh, it's like you are fake, or, you know, you're not trusting the plan enough. And it's like, I would argue that the least patriotic thing you could do is actually trust the government. I would actually argue also, in the case of when you support a political movement, is that the least impactful thing you could do is trust the plan. And because the people who don't trust the plan, they get shit done. You think Israel trusted the plan?
Nope.
When we were trying to do diplomacy, they were like, no, we're fucking bombing Iran, okay? And you're coming in with us. Yeah, exactly. They always win.
And that's the thing. And I promise you, I don't promise you, but I would imagine in the next week or two, we will get some disclosure about the Epstein files that we were not going to get.
Right.
And the reason we got that is because there are people speaking out. There's a reason why the White House responded to us.
Yeah, that's right.
The people are speaking out. It's not just us, but it's a lot of people speaking out about our frustrations. And whether you like this or not, the White House, the current administration, is very transactional. If they feel that people are becoming disillusioned, they acknowledge it immediately. So if you do not voice these things, you do not get what the fuck you want.
Get it.
It's like, And what do you actually want? At the end of the day, what do you want? Do you want to feel good in the moment? Do you want to get your little clicks and views, make your little face to camera videos, or do you want to actually have some form of justice for 1,000 girls that were victimized?
According to the government, according to our U.S. Attorney General,
1,000 that were victimized. What do you actually want? Because I'm glad you feel good with your pats on the back. To me, it'd be pretty good to know if 1,000 girls gets a little bit of justice. That would make me feel pretty good.
Yeah, it should.
So before we leave, can I ask, what is Trump's game with the Epstein files? Why would he, while he's president, Epstein is arrested, killed, dies, and then runs on releasing the files, does the fake sort of kangaroo release, and then now says that he was not working with any other conspirators?
There's only two possible theories, which I was not that open to this one, which was that Trump is implicated in until the more recent statements. Why are my boys and gals like paying attention to all this? You guys all need to move on. Or on camera where he's like, are you really still asking about Jeffrey Epstein? By the way, the day after he put out that Truth Social, he was tweeting about revoking Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship.
That's funny.
So it's funny, but he's like, you guys are focused on Epstein when there's all this other stuff happening. It's like, bro, you're literally tweeting about Rosie O'Donnell's getting denaturalized as a citizen. But that's one theory, is that, look, I mean, I read you guys the quote.
Something where
he likes them young. He said that in 2002. He said it. So maybe he knew something.
We're 6 months in.
Yeah.
How do you feel? What's the job that Trump
sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I need to give the second.
That
was the first theory, which I did not give credence to.
Yeah.
Also, Tucker made a good point. He's like, wouldn't have the Biden administration released it? I was like, well, I thought that they would have. But listen, what if they wanted to protect Bill Clinton? Or, all this other stuff.
You can't release one.
Right. You have to release it all.
Because what would the Biden administration do? They'd release one person, Trump, and then nobody else.
That would make a lot of sense.
And then we'd be like, okay.
According to Trump, they
Would you be
created
shocked
the
if
files.
Hunter was on them?
Right. Obama created the files. Okay.
And Hillary made the files about Clinton.
The second is that it would be devastating to our relationship with Israel, or it was at a request of Israel, or it'd be devastating to our relationship if the CIA is that to be exposed. I mean, for example, everybody knows the CIA killed Kennedy. Why has the CIA fought the release of these documents for 60 years?
Because they did. That is.
Sorry. Okay. I think. Okay. Again, let me be more precise in my language. I think that they were aware of and participated, at least in some form, in the plot that killed Kennedy. I'll put it more responsible. Not the kill, at the very least, involved in the plot, and of course in the cover-up. That's like actually not a question. So why did they do that? Because they knew that it would break the American public's irrevocable trust in the way that they conduct business, and that's why they fought for years to make sure that it didn't happen, or that to release the documents. I think it's the same here in this case. It's like, look, what we have is so bad to the CIA, to the FBI, to Mossad, to Saudi, to whomever, all these governments, and to the Israeli prime ministers and others, that it would just be so revelatory of the way that we conduct business. It would make it impossible for us to continue business as usual. And sir, business as usual is so important that we just have to release all of this stuff. And that's how the pressure comes down on Kash Patel, on Dan Bongino, on the Attorney General. And yeah, I mean, it leads to them saying, Kash literally said in 2023, the Epstein files are under the direct control of the FBI director. He became the FBI director. And now he's like, it was all a conspiracy theory. He literally said that. The conspiracy theories were never true. The conspiracy theories you invented, man. So you were either lying then or you're lying now. Bongino. I mean, I have the clips that people can play if they want to of the stuff that we can never let up on this story. We can never let go. Attorney General Pam Bondi from the White House lawn, which used to mean something. I have the client list on my desk. There are thousands of victims. There are all the files. We're ready to release them. And then, Akash, I think you said this. You were like, either it was all a lie or you exploited the of thousands of children to get elected. Yeah. That's pretty fucked up. If you did. So there's no good answer here. Personally, I lean to the latter. I think it's an intelligence thing, and perhaps it has a crossover with Trump himself, which I did not believe until very recently.
When you say intelligence thing, and this seems more realistic to me, not that the intelligence has devised this blackmail scheme.
Yeah, exactly. As I laid out for the multiple hours.
But he was potentially an asset to multiple intelligence agencies.
Correct.
And they looked the other way at his sexual deviant behavior.
Started to cover it up with the non-prosecution agreement.
Exactly.
And that's the complicity. That's the smoking gun. Yeah. And that's why it still remains. I mean, look, even the Justice Department admitted that was a bad deal. We never should have done it.
Right.
And you know what the irony is? It's the Justice Department themselves, main justice, the Washington, D.C. bit. They're the ones who told Acosta to do the non-prosecution agreement. But then they turn around and they blame Acosta. And
you need a patsy, man.
I almost feel bad for the guy, you know, in a way, because it looks like he was just doing what he was told, and he probably wanted to continue the investigation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he still signed it. Yeah, I agree. He was complicit and he lived with it, and he got rewarded for it. He was the labor secretary
for like a day.
For a while, 2017 to 2019.
Oh,
he reigned for over 2 years,
and then they got him.
And then he was the patsy. They were like, hey, you got to go.
Somebody's got to
go down for this, and he resigned. I think he's very rich and probably works in finance or whatever now. But my point is just that it goes up high, and unfortunately, like, we don't even really know how high, and what's left to be released is still just an immense amount of documentation, which, no, we don't have a right to have it, like a theoretical right, but we almost have like a promise here from the campaign, from the president, that they would release everything. They would declassify everything, and they have immediately turned their back on that.
I got to use the bathroom.
We're 6 months in. Give me your grade on Trump. The good, the bad. What's his report card grade?
Well, you know, I'm actually not important in this. Just like, let's look at the issues, like, for things that I think he was elected on. I think he was elected on three primarily. Number one is the economy, because inflation was high. Inflation report came out today. It's actually increased 2.7% since June. A lot of that is, in my opinion, because of the incompetent way that they've rolled out the tariffs. It actually makes me really upset. I'm really pro-tariff. The idea of tariff, strategic tariffs. I think the way that this has been done has been, frankly, a disaster. The only reason that it didn't crash the economy is because he rolled them all back and said, we're going to do a 90-day pause or whatever. But creating chaos in people's lives and fucking with people's businesses is terrible. Mark and I are new parents. Do you remember the stroller problem about how over 90% of strollers and car seats come from China? Oh, yeah. Well, you know, the Up-A-Baby stroller that like everyone in New York has, that went up by hundreds of dollars as a result of the tariffs. Sorry, I think that's wrong. I think the car seats have become more expensive. It's like you were elected to make life better for people. That's a pretty material way, actually, that Trump directly impacted me and all other new parents here in the United States. So that's where something, I think, creating that chaos economically has been a problem. On the bill, the bill philosophically, to me, I just think really comes away from a lot of the Trump promise. And I think I heard you talking about the bill. I mean, let's just look at the math, right? Like, they are like, oh, well, we're going to cut spending. And it's like, well, okay, but you increase the defense budget by $150 billion, right? By the way, Doge never looked at the DOD. What happened there? You know, like, whoa, where are you, Doge? Why did we fire like somebody in the National Weather Service and not someone in the Pentagon who can't pass an audit for 5 years in a row? And so, you know, this is talk, and it was cheap, in my opinion. Like, they increased the defense budget, and instead, you know, they put work requirements in Medicaid and in food stamps. I'm not necessarily against work requirements per se, but really what bothered me was the way they were increasing the dollar shift to the states. This is really wonky. I apologize to everyone, but the end result is that more people could probably lose healthcare and or food stamps. Again, we can have a conversation about welfare and food stamps and all of that, but it was the priority of increasing the defense budget, of extending the tax cuts, which are pretty overwhelmingly good for the top 1%.
Help people overseas, it seems, at the expense of.
Exactly. So helping people overseas, and you got people who are at least precarious, you know, in terms of that. So I think that the bill was a big miss, in my opinion.
On the simple promise of Make America Great Again, it seems life for most Americans is not as...
I think that the fundamentals still remain the same, and that's the problem. Is I don't see a concrete way to fix that. So yesterday, a report came out from the National Association of Realtors that the average first-time home buyer in the United States is now 38 years old. It used to be 27. And look, Trump can't just wave a magic wand and fix that. To the extent that he can do anything, it's to fire the Fed chair. And I guess, you know, let's give him credit. He's trying to do that. Yeah. But my point is just that the GOP as a whole and that bill did not seem laser focused, you know, on those problems. So I would say I don't think it's gone very well. Then, you know, on immigration, I mean, look, it's controversial. I wait for Andrew. I would say of all the things that he, quote, promised to do, that's the one where he really has, you know, I think he's delivered. The problem, in my opinion, is like the way the administration decides to conduct itself is kind of like an Iraq, like shock and awe approach, where you come in with these big operations. Now, I will explain the logic. The logic is because there's 30 million people here, probably, who are illegal. Deporting them all, even with billions of dollars, is like probably impossible. impossible. So you want to stage these like large scale things to get people to self-deport. And then about 1 million people or so, according to the administration, has left. We don't have a way of checking those numbers, which is why it's kind of difficult. But I would put it all together and I would say that the story to me is just chaos. It's like one that flips back and forth. We have Doge, which is in power. Elon's the co-president. Then he leaves, right? And now he's, talking about Epstein files and the America Party. And then we bomb Iran very shortly afterwards. We said we weren't going to do that. And then we had the tariff brouhaha, like in between. It doesn't feel as if there's like a steady hand on the wheel, chaotically, I mean. And I would apply that to immigration as well. The biggest criticism Americans have right now about the immigration policy is not even necessarily deportation. It's the chaotic way that they feel it's being handled. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Like, why were people so mad at Biden over the border? Because of the chaos at the border. Yeah. And let's give Trump credit. He did fix that. Yeah. There's 0 illegal crossings. Yeah. Fine. But the point is now they look at the raids themselves and the way they're conducted and kind of like blown up by the White House as chaotic, right? And I think that when you put that together with the way that the tariff policy, the immigration policy, and even the war policy, I mean, we were negotiating with Iran and then we weren't negotiating with Iran. We berated Zelensky in the Oval Office and told him he didn't have the cards and we're giving him more weapons. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And then the Epstein thing is, well, you run on it, you say you have it, now you say you don't have it. It screams like chaos and kind of incompetence. And I can see why a lot of people are moving against it. So that's like my wholesome.
What grade would you give him? Well, that sounds all bad.
Me personally? Yeah. I mean, I would go issue by issue. So like on foreign policy, I would give an F just in terms of Ukraine and Israel. On immigration, considering what he ran on, I would probably give him like a B+, just because on the merits, I think he actually is doing almost every single thing that he said he would do. If anything, I would say my criticism, I mean, I should be open about it. I'm very pro mass deportation, but my criticism of it is that it seems like in many cases they went more for the show as opposed to like the policy. And I think that's the problem. So that's like my personal criticism.
Target but a lot of people,
and also the reason I will not give it an A is because a huge portion of the immigration machine was used to go after these like pro-Palestine students for speaking out against Israel. I'm like, yo, fuck that. Sorry. Okay. That's like a total, not only a free speech concern. It's like, why are you using the resources of my government to deport critics of another country? What? People who are here legally? This is the least of our problems. All right. But let's put that, to the side. So on the economy, I mean, look, this isn't me speaking. Like people know I'm pretty out of step with like the trickle down GOP, but like, I don't know. I think the Big Beautiful Bill was a disaster. Like not only in terms of its unpopularity, but it didn't, invest in all the things. It didn't invest in making America better, like as a country. There's no massive expansion of manufacturing tax credits. There's no like ability to compete and deal with China. It was really just kind of like a personal tax extension for the rich, more corporate tax extension for business as usual. I think business as usual is what he was elected to like go against. So for me, it's like a C. So you can average all that together. I don't know what that is.
Here's my question:
F, A+ C. So
where does the Conservative Party go from here? We asked, and after the election, where does the Democratic Party go? The Conservative Party, what are y'all going to do now?
Well, what do you mean Conservative Party?
Like the Republican Party, the Republican.
Well, those are two very different things.
The Republican Party, where do they go from here?
What's the difference?
Conservative is an ideology. Republican is a party. So conservative. So to be conservative is that's a big. Yeah, anyway.
I thought
that's more of a meta conversation. So
is MAGA conservative? Or
no, in many cases, MAGA is not conservative. Actually, most MAGA voters are on Medicaid and they don't want it to be cut, so they don't care about entitlement spending. That's a non-conservative position, right? But it's conservative to cut government spending. So those are kind of a direct tension. I could talk forever about this. It's a very intra-Washington kind of conversation, like what it means to be conservative and kind of what it means to be a Republican. And Trump, in my opinion, the reason why he was able to succeed is because he wasn't conservative. And he even said that. He said, I'm not a conservative whenever he was running in the 2016 primary. He is originally, at least to me, was more what I would call a rightist, like more somebody like the European right, a culture warrior who kind of accepts the legitimacy of the social welfare state and has more populist policies. But that's not conservative. Right? It's very, very different. I know this is semantics, but like it is important.
This is good. Yeah.
It's important to like analyze like what we mean.
So what happens to, I think what you're trying to say is the Republican Party.
Yeah, the Republican Party I mean, look, they still have a lot of choices. You got 3.5 more years to go. Like, that's a long ass time. Like, who knows? All of this could be ancient news. I don't think so. I think in general, if you look at the history of presidencies, you're basically baked by 100 days. They wasted their whole 100 days on Doge, in my opinion, which was a disaster. At this point, I think we could fairly say. And then they did the tax cut or the tax bill, which exploded the deficit. Increased defense spending by 150 billion.
Yeah, the next 100 days wasn't much better.
You know, then they did Israel, the Iran thing. Now they're doing Ukraine. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I skipped over the tariffs, which I talked earlier, which were bad for the public and have not been handled competently really at all. So for them, I mean, their problem is that they're in a cult of personality. Like they're locked into Trump himself as an action. And the biggest problem for them is when John McCain lost, he was like, okay, you guys do what you want. When Bush left, he was like, I'm out, right? They fuck off. And with Trump, like, do you guys ever see him not trying to guide the Republican Party? He would never allow a post-mortem. When Romney lost, right? The entire Republican Party had to have a conversation. Who are we? What do we stand for? And the conclusion was not that bullshit, not Romney, right? That's not going to stand with the Trump party, right? So I think that, they have a lot of issues, like structurally, for where they want to go. In my opinion, they won the popular vote for the first time in 2004, since 2004, for a Republican. They flipped all kinds of crazy states because of the economy and really because of immigration. And if they don't find a way to flip their numbers on both of those, and especially if the American way of life does not get materially better at a structural level, I think they're going to lose. And I think they deserve to lose if that's what happens. If that age for a first-time home buyer goes from 38 from today to like 42, and if the home prices continue to go up and the supply continues to go down, if we see wages stagnant, if we don't see like real material changes to the way people live, I just think, I think that the Republicans will lose. And we always live in a change election. Right?
I don't want to divert from this too much. I know that we probably got to wrap up soon because we got to do something for you.
Yes.
So just real quick, obviously, we're in New York City right now, greatest city in the world.
Yes, sir.
And there's an interesting mayoral election coming up. What are your thoughts on the cultural circumstances that have happened that have propelled Mamdani to superstardom and a primary victory?
Mamdani there's this phrase from back in the day, and it's a vindicating phrase to me. It was all politics is local. That was what they used to say back in the day. Yeah. In 2010, that actually flipped because there were all of these Democrats who lived in Republican areas and they just got blown out, even though they lived there for 20 years, because they're like, you support Obama. And Republicans were like, oh, I can't deal with that. Right. He supports Obama. Right. Mamdani was a return, right? Because what his opponents did is they made their entire campaign against him about Israel. And he's like, no, guys, I'm talking about New York City. Yeah. I'm talking about the halal carts. Yeah. I'm talking about rent is too damn high. Yeah. And what I really love about that is it subverts all of this like national political rhetoric, DEI style language, and it brings us back to, what are you going to do about New York, dude?
Which is what people need when they're suffering.
That's what people need, exactly. Yeah. And that this city, people have made a lot about like, oh, Mamdani won the rich people making $100,000. I'm like, bro, in New York, $100,000, you're like rent poor. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's a good ass point.
Dude, you're poor as shit, actually. On a bed, like
you're
a guy
legitimately eligible for the housing line.
No, like guys making $50K in Iowa are way richer than you, who are making 100. Like 100%. Post-tax, post-state, local, federal, 100K in New York. Like I'm like,
you got roommates.
Yeah, it's like, bro, you got multiple roommates. Okay, you're like living in a 3-bed if you're like 25 in, I don't know, the East Alphabet City or something like that. So let's recalibrate for New York expectations.
That's a good ass point.
My favorite videos that he would do is like the halal cart video. Yeah. Be like, hey guys, like halal's too expensive. Let's make it $8 again. Yep. I loved whenever he walked across Manhattan. And the thing is, what he was able to do, he'd be like, no, you're obsessed about Israel. Yeah. You guys are I'm not spending all my time talking about this. I would stay here in New York and hear all my policies to trying to change that.
Fantastic.
And if you've lived under Bloomberg, I mean, my criticism of this city is that they unfortunately kind of turned it into a playground of the rich as opposed to a place that people lived. When the stuff I would read about the 1980s in New York, I'm not saying it didn't exist.
I think it's always been a playground for the rich.
It definitely has, but it has become the capital of the global financial elite for a certain, when I walk around here, Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, when
think
you
it
walked around in the
felt like there
80s,
was
do you
success.
barely even hear English in the streets here in the summer, right? Half these people, they're from fucking
that's
Dubai,
always the
Saudi
case.
Arabia, Germany, like all over the world. Like,
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I think you're describing London.
well, there's that too.
But in terms of, I think the difference now is that like everybody always came here for opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's
it doesn't
right,
matter
that's
if
right.
you're an immigrant, you came here for opportunity. If you're from America and you moved here from like Wisconsin or Maine, you came here from opportunity. You're thinking
Yes.
of work at a big fund. You're thinking to be a graphic designer. You're thinking to be a fashion designer. Something. It's always opportunity. And I think that what's happening now is that kids or Gen Z feels like the only way to make it now is through TikTok.
Yeah.
And I don't begrudge them because when we were coming up, at least in entertainment, there was like Comedy Central, MTV. There are these things that you could get on that made it feel accessible. And even if it wasn't accessible for you, there was this idea that like next year they're going to do an audition and maybe I'll get that, right? This idea of like getting on SNL, all these different things were possible. And one of the nice things about the, decentralization of entertainment and making it go on the internet is that it gave freedom for people like us who wanted to go after it and make it ourselves. The problem is not everybody wants to go after and make it themselves. They want institutions and structures that are established that they can hope to get accepted by and put on. And now that those have fallen apart, and that's just in entertainment, now I think people are like, so I just got to go viral on TikTok. And it's just like, I love that because I love the idea of like, I'm in control of my destiny. Not everybody loves that. And I think even the illusion of opportunity is better than luck.
Yeah, definitely.
For people. And I think they're seeing that in not just entertainment, but you're probably seeing that in other spheres as well. And to go back to what you're saying about like you make $100,000 a year, but you have $300,000 worth of debt.
Yeah.
I think that's why the rent freeze is so enticing to people, because if you're spending $1,700 a month, let's say, on your student loans, and that's just the interest, you're not even chipping away at them. That's your savings. So if you, again, take your rent from $5,000 a month and you take it down to $3,300, now you have your savings again. And I think in a way, the program is kind of like punishing landlords for universities charging exorbitant prices.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're just passing the buck to someone else. And it's like landlord is a bad person, of course, because they own this property and there are shitty landlords. I get it. Yeah. But like, I think the core of the issue is the fact that these kids are saddled with this debt, with these degrees that offer them nothing in a city like New York. And they're paralyzed with this fear that there is no opportunity for upward mobility.
That's very well said. And what you're getting to, and we'll wrap here, is like a structural issue, which is that America and our generation, I'm younger millennial, like I'm 33. And when I was coming up, it was you go to college and you will be rewarded. And now I'm actually at the age where I get to look back at who made it and who didn't. And I'm telling you guys, my friends with the most debt, they didn't make it.
It's fucked,
it's
dude.
fucked up. And that, you watch the choices that people have to make. We're going to delay having a kid. That breaks my heart, man. We're going to have to move wherever, even though we want to live here, we have to go move somewhere else because we can't afford it, even though this is the best place to make money, right? This is the best place for my career. I can't have it all. I have to make serious choices.
You can't take the risks necessary for success. It's almost impossible to become successful without taking on immense risk.
Quite literally. When I started my business, I had $50,000 in credit card debt. I would have been fucked if breaking points didn't work. But, I mean, I was like, I'm young. I called you before. I was like, I think it'll work.
It will.
I was like, I think so. But we would have been actually hosed.
But imagine somebody with $300,000 in debt.
Right. They're not doing that.
They have a job that actually pays for things.
Yes.
And they go, I can't risk leaving
or
this.
Or wife and kids.
Wife and kids is like, I think that's such a...
They're like stratospheric in terms of...
for people.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that like contributes to the support from Mamdani and specifically the demographic that seems to be really excited about what he's going to bring. But to me, there's a little bit of this passing the buck. It's like, okay, we have this thing we can't move, which are these loans. So we got to move it to another area to free up some economic mobility for these people. And if you're one of those people that's saddled with that debt, like you don't give a fuck who got to pay for it.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
As long as it's not you. So I get that. They're offering a solution that maybe in the long term will hurt people, and I want to talk to him about it because I want to see like how we grapple with that. Like,
yeah,
what
he's got to
happens.
come on the show.
No,
we'll work on it.
I've been talking. No, I've been talking with them. I've been talking to. So it looks like that's going to happen. So because I genuinely want to ask earnestly, like, what are the downstream effects of some of these policies? How does that work? But there's no question that they're enticing, and it's not to the poor. People think that, oh, the poor love the socialists. No. It's the middle class that are entitled in their brains to a better life that they're not having, that this is so enticing. They're like, wait, why am I same economic bracket as my parents? I was supposed to be richer
Frankly,
than them.
lower than
Or
them.
lower.
Yeah.
There is no middle class.
In my opinion, you're materially much poorer than your parents. You're way materially more poor than your parents. And that's fucked up. I think that's wrong. And that's a systemic problem that gets to the like very structure of our economy. I mean, one of the most important facts in the world from my friend Joe Weisenthal is that Shanghai Stock Exchange has barely grown since 2009, but everyone in China, you are way more materially rich since 2009. In America, the number has to go up. Capital must return, and specifically at 8 to 9%. Our whole retirement's banked on that. Our whole economy is banked on that. And it doesn't matter if the shit that we own is nicer or not. It must return. It must have dividends. It must have payoff. And in Shanghai and in Beijing and all of that, they're like, oh, we don't give a fuck about that. They're like, are we getting drone deliveries? Are our houses nicer? Are our electric cars the best vehicles in the world, hands down? I'm telling you, if their ban was lifted, I would buy them tomorrow. There is no competition. I would throw the Tesla. I'm getting in the Yangwang. Like, it's done. BYD, let me in. Huawei, any of these other people, they have the best cars in the world. It's genuinely not a question. Not best electric, best cars in the world are in Shanghai, Beijing. Like, the Chinese peasant, or is materially much better off than the United States than it was compared to 2009 than the average American from 2009 to 2025. So let's all spend some time asking why. And a lot of it is debt leverage projects, education being sold, badly structured debt. I mean, the way that people are, even how do you get rich in America today? For most people, it's like, or even really filthy rich, it's to work in hedge funds and in finance and microtransactions for stuff that does not make this country better off. If you know how you get rich in China? The government goes, you're allowed to get rich. You can do it by building the best electric cars in the world. Oh, the hedge fund shit, you're gone. You're going to the gulag. Actually, we don't do that here, right? And I'm not advocating for that system, but in comparison to ours, it does work. And that's a deep question that we all have to ask.
It's a structural,
it's like, who
structural
is
problem.
better off today? I believe that the Chinese are better off as a result of their way of life, which is really fucked up, because I think we have a much better, we had a path. We didn't always used to be like this, and we could go in another direction.
Thanks, Reagan.
So, there you go. No, it's not just Reagan. They're all complicit now at this point.
Saagar, thank you so much, bro. We love you. Appreciate it. Make sure you check out Saagar on Breaking Points.
There you go.